Hey everybody, tonight we're debating creation versus evolution, and we are starting right now with Dr. Thompson's opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us, Dr. Thompson. The floor is all yours.
Great, thank you, James. So let me share my screen here. I am really happy to be here. I'm actually a big fan of modern day debates, and it's a lot of fun. So let me just get started. A little bit about me to introduce myself. So I'm Chris Thompson. I'm an assistant professor of neuroscience at Virginia Tech. You might be wondering why someone like this is presenting on evolution. Well, my background is that I have a bachelor's of science at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana in ecology, ethology, and evolution, where I focus mostly on ethology, which is animal behavior, hence my interest in neuroscience, as well as the evolution side of things. So I got some background, but I am not a trained evolutionary biologist. I'm a neuroscientist. That said, evolution figures very prominently into neuroscience, and we'll touch on that hopefully several times in this debate. So I study, just briefly about what I study how hormones shape the development and plasticity of neural circuits. I do this in a wide range of species. I've worked with birds, mammals, and currently I work with frogs. So shown here, what we're looking at is the metamorphosis of tadpoles into frogs, which is dependent upon thyroid hormone. It turns out thyroid hormone shapes the neurodevelopment of all vertebrates, and that's because all vertebrates share a common ancestor. So we can use the tadpole as an excellent model for understanding how thyroid hormone works in the brain because of that fact. So the views that I express tonight are my own. They do not reflect the views of Virginia Tech. Now, this issue, actually, about creation and evolution, this isn't an issue about science, actually. We will be talking about scientific topics, but it's not about science. This is an issue that is theological. So this is a theological debate between one worldview that requires a literal interpretation of the Bible and a worldview that does not. The majority of people all over the world do not start with the first principle that every single word in the Bible must be 100% factual and true. And in fact, there are many religious people that see the Bible as allegory and metaphorical. Most accept that that evolution is an accurate working model of the history of life on Earth and that we are continuing to develop it. So what are the big differences between evolution and creationism as I see it? Well, evolution, the big idea is that we have common descent with modification. Animals and other organisms are related to each other, descended from a common ancestor, and that there's been modification that's occurred. We have a mechanism to explain that change through time. Now, a simple explanation is that natural selection on heritable traits is that mechanism. It's something that Darwin developed. That was his big idea 150 years ago, but we've expanded upon that idea. And we now know that it's actually a lot more complex and a lot more powerful in the ways that he didn't even understood or appreciate in his time. The other thing about evolution that's critical is that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old. This is an important point in this philosophical debate. We believe in an old Earth. We also have an understanding that biogeography, where animals are located across the world, and overall geology, the organization of fossils, this is explained by natural mechanisms. So on the creationist side, they believe that there are kinds, whatever they want to define that as. It tends to vary depending upon whatever argument they need to make at that time. They believe that they're specially created, whatever that means, de novo, all at once. Now, as far as a mechanism goes, I don't see a testable, reasonable mechanism that they have to offer beyond magic. There's just things are wished into existence, and that's it. There's no actual mechanism. And this is an important point because intelligent design implies that there was design happening and that there was things that were put together. What is that mechanism? How did that occur in physical space on Earth? They believe that the Earth is 6,000 to 10,000 years old. This is another very important point because it's going to be a huge difference in explaining how things look across the Earth, such as explanations of biogeography and geology. On the creationist side, they typically believe that that is all organized by Noah's flood, which occurred somewhere around 4,000 years ago. So we have all kinds of lines of evidence to support evolution. I can go through this list. This is just a subset. Aron is specialist in other aspects of this. My specialty is a little bit more on the ideas of comparative morphology. So I've studied all kinds of different animals, and I've looked at how they have similar features, that those shared features actually imply and strongly can only be explained by a fact that they have a shared heritage. I'm happy to talk about that. We talk about the evolution of the brain, something that seems extraordinarily complex. Some people might assume that it's designed in some way. And in fact, there are lots of reasons to think that it's not. So creationists, of course, they need to explain that there's fossil evidence. They need to explain that how do we have comparative morphology? How do we explain these similarities that seem to follow in a nested hierarchy that falls into phylogenetic trees? Same goes for genetics. Genetics, you compare genes between, say, chimpanzees and humans, or humans to mice, or humans to frogs. You can see a nested hierarchy that occurs. Same with biogeography. Why are there marsupials in Australia and not elsewhere, except for just a handful? As well as the age of the Earth. Again, this is a very critical point that I think that they have to address. So that's my opening. I think I might be just under 6 minutes. And I'm happy to turn that over to Aron.
You got it. Thank you very much. Well, kick it over to Aron.
Is it my turn now?
Yes, sir.
That's right. Absolutely. Okay. Thanks very much, Aron. The floor is all yours.
All right. So when Carolus Linnaeus devised the systematic classification of life in 1735, he noticed that everything was nested in a hierarchical series of daughter groups descending from parent categories that were themselves siblings of several generations or ranks of earlier ancestral classifications. What he saw was the branching pattern of a family tree. And this was wholly inconsistent with his belief in divine design, and he had no explanation for it, because he knew that there could be a variety of forms within any given species, whether dogs or cattle or pigeons or pea plants, since he was a botanist, but there was no bridge between species, no point where two closely related populations could diverge to the point that they could no longer interbreed. Different species could sometimes produce infertile hybrids if they were in the same genus, but not between different genera, even in the same family. And his taxonomic tree required speciation, the emergence of new species, which he could only assume would be an act of special creation by God. And he could accept microevolution, which is variation within a species, but not macroevolution, which is variation between species, being the emergence of new species. And later he realized that speciation had to be happening, but he couldn't figure out how, and he died with his greatest enigma unanswered. Then a century later, Darwin provided an explanation for the origin of species by means of natural selection. And once we knew that speciation could happen, folks began directly observing and documenting that in real time, on top of the many other ways that we can confirm these relationships in any given taxonomic family. For example, what was originally nested only in morphology is now twin nested in genetics as well, like following two sets of footprints back to where they once walked together. The Bible talks about different kinds of plants and animals, and it describes kinds according to whether they're able to interbreed to produce fertile offspring to bring forth after their kind. And thus, the Hebrew word min means exactly the same thing as the biological species concept. And modern creationists, being forced to accept some level of taxonomy, but desperate to reject the rest, have tried to redefine that, and they've tried to misdefine macroevolution too, and many other relevant terms as well. But neither science nor scripture supports their attempts to move the goalposts to change what these words have always meant. Now, creationists, and by them I mean Ken Ham and even Kent Hovind, now accept that speciation happens, which means that they accept macroevolution by definition, and they accept natural selection as an evolutionary mechanism leading to speciation. So they literally accept Darwin's account on the origin of species by means of natural selection. Yet they pretend to reject what they erroneously label as Darwinism, not understanding what that word means either. They have no argument against evolution at all, and nothing to promote a mystical creation by conjuration either. All they can do is point back to some point in the misty past beyond evolution, to the origin of life and some notion of universal beginnings, things we don't understand nearly as well, to pretend that we don't know, therefore magic, as if the unexplained is explained by God, as if the magic imaginary designer is somehow the default assumption, when when such is not even possible, much less probable, and nor is it in any way indicated. They have to show that there's a there, something to show that there is at least some reality to the absurdity they believe, that it's not all entirely imaginary, as it certainly seems to be. Evolution, on the other hand, is not remotely imaginary. It is demonstrable. We know now that if you take one original population and divide them, say, on different sides of a natural boundary like a wasteland, that soon enough, if you find a lone wanderer in the no man's land between them, you'll be able to recognize just by looking at it which group it came from, because these now separate populations continually produce their own unique mutations that are not shared with the other group anymore because there's no more gene flow between them. But the smaller the community, population genetics means that the parent gene pool tends to restrict new variants. So the larger the population, the slower the evolution. But the smaller the community, the more likely new traits will be expressed and spread throughout that population generations down the road, until you have discernible subsets where every member of this group shares common traits that are not shared with any member of the other group. If they can still interbreed and produce fertile offspring, then that is a subspecies distinction, what the Bible would call a kind. But the more diverse each collective genome becomes, the more they grow apart genetically, the less likely they will be physically or chemically compatible, and the higher the probability that their progeny may not be fertile or even viable, until finally they are each their own genetically isolated species. At that point, the leash is off. The old gene pool imposes no influence at all anymore. Thus, speciation is the only taxonomic distinction that has consistent definition among sexually reproductive animals, and it is the only way that any of this diversity happens is by evolutionary mechanisms. This accounts for the whole of taxonomy, all of it, at every level. If you take the time to look at it in detail, you'll see that we can watch evolution happening, manipulate it, trace it, confirm it conclusively with multiple lines of independent overlapping evidence tracking back hundreds of millions of years. Evolution is an inescapable fact of population genetics, fossils, and phylogeny. Our opponents cannot deny that evident reality, no matter how much they would rather make believe in something else instead. All they have is a literal fairy tale, nothing but folk tales that have been proven wrong. We can show the truth of evolution. They can't show that there was ever any truth to creationism.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening as well. We are going to kick it over to the creation side as well. But first, want to say, folks, in case it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics, and it's only debates. And we want to let you know, no matter what walk of life you are from, we hope you feel welcome. Atheist, Christian, Muslim, you name it. We're glad you're here. And this is a big one. At the bottom right of your screen, as you can see, this Friday, Apostate Prophet and David Wood partner up against Perfect Dawa and Nadir on whether or not Islam is violent. You don't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Cindi and Sal. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is all yours for your openings as well.
Cindy's going to go for 9 minutes, then me for 3.
You bet.
Again, thank you to James, Aron, and Dr. Chris for making this discussion possible. Consider the title of this article by evolutionary biologist John J. Welch. What is wrong with evolutionary biology? Welch's article is just a partial laundry list of the problems with evolutionary biology. We hope to show tonight that he did not even scratch the surface of those problems. Consider also Jerry Coyne, author of Why Evolution is True. Coyne states, in science's pecking order, evolutionary biology lurks somewhere near the bottom, far closer to the pseudoscience of phrenology than to physics. We emphatically agree with Coyne in putting physics at the top and evolutionary biology at the bottom. I'm sorry, my evolutionary friends, we do still love you. For example, in physics, here are Maxwell's equations for classical electrodynamics. These relate electricity, magnetism, and optics. These equations also led to Lorentz Einstein's theory of special relativity. Without our modern understanding of electromagnetism represented by these equations, there would be no modern electronics, no modern cars, no spark plugs, no airplanes, computers, phones, light bulbs, etc. We cannot live modern lives without scientists accepting Maxwell's equations of physics. But I'm sorry to disagree with Dr. Chris. We can study biology without accepting evolution at all. Biology is the study of structure and function of living things. Structure and function, I believe, scream design, purpose, foresight, and planning. Why is evolution believed? It is somewhat like this picture of a pencil dipped in water that appears to be bent, and this diagram representing what ancient man believed was a geocentric universe. Thomas Huxley, Darwin's bulldog, said, "The great tragedy of science is the slaying of a beautiful hypothesis by an ugly fact." Or in our opinion, the slaying of an ugly hypothesis by a beautiful fact. These optical illusions created misconceptions that were finally destroyed by facts. The pencil is not bent, and the earth is not the center of the universe. Stephen Jay Gould asked the rhetorical question, did he, that is God, create life to mimic evolution and test our faith thereby? Francis Collins also argues that to deny evolution would make God a great deceiver. This is like insisting the pencil is bent because we assume God would not make optical illusions. But this is a logical fallacy. The real question is whether the pencil is bent or not. The metaphor of the bent pencil applies to evolutionary biology. There are many things in biology which could give us the illusion of natural evolution. For example, ALU elements, junk DNA, pseudogenes, etc. Sal's going to take that further during open dialogue. Darwin supposed a nested hierarchy similar to this tree of life diagram from the Smithsonian. To many people, the grouping of life forms appears to conform to that tree of life diagram because of morphological and genetic similarities. For example, all living organisms are made of cells. So the appearance can be that we must have all come from a first cell. Additionally, 99% of living organisms use the same genetic code and the same DNA alphabet, A, C, T, and G. However, remember, things are not always as they appear. For the sake of argument, let's say there is a universal common ancestor, a first life form. That first life form would still require a miracle. According to Virchow's principles, cells only come from pre-existing cells. This begs the question, where did the first living cell come from? We understand abiogenesis is not the same as evolution. However, there would be no evolution without the miracle of abiogenesis, because there's no evolution without life. Therefore, evolutionists, you are not off the hook on the origin of that first life. Some scientists deal with the abiogenesis question by appealing to multiple universes. Some appeal to aliens because they know that all life requires a parent or a seed. In addition to the fact that evolution cannot even get started without the miracle of the first life, the next problem is the origin of major protein families. Major protein families are so vastly different, both in shape and sequence. It's clear from diagrams such as this, there is no universal common ancestor for the major protein/gene families. The major protein families and many taxonomically restricted protein families would require events indistinguishable from miracles of God. The question is fundamentally whether complex life emerged by miracles or by no miracles. We can examine this more in open dialogue. So far, we have assumed, for the sake of argument, that the Earth is billions of years old and that common descent is true, in order to show that evolutionary theory, however you define it, will still fail on the most important issue, namely the emergence of, as Darwin said, quote, organs of extreme perfection and complication, end quote. Though Sal and I believe in young Earth, We acknowledge unexplained problems like geomagnetism, radiometric dating, speed of light, and the distant starlight problem. We have not emphasized these today in the interest of time. But if the Earth is young, then there would be no universal common descent, because there would not be enough time to evolve everything from a primordial cell. So this raises the question for some, why then would God make creatures similar to us, like chimps? The answer we're putting on the table is that God created these patterns of similarity to facilitate scientific discovery and medical research in this intelligently designed but also cursed world. Creationists should thank God every day we have body parts that resemble the body parts of, quote, model organisms, as seen in this diagram. We claim that through these model organisms, we can understand that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, as it says in the Psalms. If we did not have these designed model organisms, we would have to resort to dissecting humans rather than fetal pigs, rats, chimps, or squids. We are different enough from chimps that if the Earth is young, it would be evident we do not share a common ancestor, but are rather separate creations. But we are similar enough to chimps that chimps can serve as a model organism for scientific and medical research. We can do medical research just as well, if not better, assuming common design by God, rather than assuming common descent with no God. Take it away, Sal.
And thank you, Cindi. Some of the problems that I will point out, we can discuss it in the free discussion, are problems with the transition from prokaryote to eukaryote. I deal with diagrams like this in the origin of eukaryotic chromatin, and this is just all the machinery involved in double-stranded break repair for eukaryotic chromatin. The number of simultaneous events and things that have to be there for this to work just boggles the mind. If not in the theological sense, it would be a miracle in the statistical sense. Gradual pathways do not at all seem reasonable, and that is subject somewhat to experiment. There's also the problem of the membrane-bound nucleus of the eukaryote. This would involve just so many things that it just boggles the mind in terms of the complexity. There would have to be the membrane-bound organelle plus all the ports like the nuclear port complex, the import-export machinery involved, the gatekeepers, and then things called nuclear localization signals. I have diagrams on that, and also translocation processes. I've had the privilege to work with Dr. John Sanford. He is a Cornell research professor, retired. His invention, the gene gun, has fed starving billions. He represents the unsung creationists that you don't hear of. He is published in all sorts of venues, including the prestigious scientific journal Nature. He published in the Journal of Mathematical Biology. I've had the privilege of being his colleague and worked for him. This theorem that they published set records in the Journal of Mathematical Biology. I have then worked with them on the population genetics of this. Natural selection does not work according to what you think it does in the textbooks. The elite know that it's kind of a failing paradigm, and we can cover that. He was invited to the National Institutes of Health to talk about this problem. We are decaying. And there are all sorts of other things. There, as far as mechanism, we do have on the table by various physicists that God exists as a possibility. And I would just say that argument by contradiction is not an argument from ignorance. How improbable does something have to be? How complex before we begin to entertain the possibility that it was a divine miracle? We can scientifically argue for improbability. That's well within the bounds of science. If we're willing to be speculative, we could invite this conception of God just straight from quantum mechanics without appeal to any sort of theology. This leads to testable predictions about the human genome decaying, the destiny of the biosphere, the destiny of civilization. So I look forward to the free discussion, and I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for those openings from our creation side. We are going to jump into open conversation. This is going to be a civil conversation, folks, as we know that for you, it's important that there is not too much speaking over each other or interrupting. That's why if it gets too rowdy, we'll just break it into 2-minute segments. With that, thank you very much to all of our guests. We're thrilled to have you here. This is going to be a fun one. The floor is all yours.
All right. Well,
Across the aisle.
Sorry, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Handshakes across the aisle before we come out.
Indeed. Yes. Let's have a nice civil debate. I think that would be a great idea. Yeah. And also, I'm Chris. I'm not Dr. Chris. I know I put that in there. That's because if you're going to search for my YouTube channel, you have to add the Dr. Chris Thompson. You can find it. I have all kinds of videos on mostly about neuroscience and how the brain works. But you know, so yes, I'm Chris. I don't insist anyone calls me Dr. Chris. So let's see. I have a couple of questions regarding your presentation. And I guess one of them is that you are putting forward the idea that common morphology that we find that appears to follow a very nice specific pattern that follows along exactly the predictions that we see from evolution, from what we would predict would be like when recent common ancestors happened, and that these model organisms that we happen to use, that these were specially created to allow for medical discoveries. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, and I would just say this, in geocentrism, you had testable predictions that were fulfilled. It was the anomalies that broke it. So in geocentrism, you could predict eclipses and all sorts of other things. So
would that then suggest that then suggest that your hypothesis that these model organisms are well suited for discovery of like health issues in humans, would there be anomalies there that would disprove that hypothesis? How would you go about disproving that hypothesis?
Okay. So there is a peer-reviewed publication that I've worked on, and it's actually been pioneered by a lot of other people on this topic, where we. So first of all, since I knew you're a neuroscientist, I put the squid up there for you. I
appreciate that
significance.
Yes, they're lovely animals.
Neuroscience was pioneered by the giant squid axon. The squid is not very, as far as I know, very near us, but it's beautifully optimized in some sense to enable it to probe its nervous system, because we could insert, little probes in it because it's just so big relative to other creatures.
I would say that it's because they don't have myelin. That's why their axons are so big. So they never evolved myelin. That's something that's specific to vertebrates. And so they don't have any myelin sheathing. And that allowed for those axons to be very large, which makes it easy to record. And that's why early studies to identify how action potentials work and how synapses work, a lot of that work was done in the giant squid, like you pointed out.
Okay, if I could share my screen, maybe I could more directly answer your question, Dr. Chris. I'll try to call you Chris.
Yeah, it's fine.
This is Chris.
All right.
I have to change my name.
This is, again, we have similarity. I'm not denying that, of the human and zebrafish. That's the collagen. And we can say it's 75% similar depending on your scoring technique. So, and then you can build these nested hierarchy diagrams, these phylogenetic, it looks like compelling evidence for evolution. But then I showed that there is the problem that the proteins don't have really good, there's not a common ancestor like here. So on the left is collagen, on the right is the zinc finger 136. And like on the left, the glycines are highlighted. On the right, the cysteines and histidines are highlighted. And you can see it's a very distinct architecture. So there's no common ancestry in the proteins. And I think that's problematic. And it's also a probabilistic thing. But to the point of biology being optimized, one project I'm working on is if you take the sequences, like say it's zebrafish, humans, and you take the homologs across a large spectrum of species, you put it through an algorithm that looks kind of like this here. You can look it up on Wikipedia. It's the direct coupling analysis. It can then give you the protein fold, a three-dimensional. It's just like voodoo. And to me, I mean, just it's worth exploring. But a testable hypothesis is if we start to remove creatures from the set of homologs, that the protein fold prediction will fail. That would indicate to me, as I was saying, the hypothesis we put forward, this is biology's optimized for scientific discovery, that both morphologically and then also at the molecular level, it's optimized, but you really see it with this. And if one is a young Earth creationist, you'd have to say, okay, why do you have all this similarity there? What's the pattern? Because it does look evolved, and we've acknowledged that here. But if it's young, that would be kind of the ugly fact that destroys evolution, that it's not common descent, it's common design. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually struck by a story that I know quite well, which is the discovery of the Parkin gene. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it's called the Parkin gene because this gene, the first thing that we learned about it is that in humans that have a specific mutation in this gene, they have early onset Parkinson's disease. So we identified this gene. We said, oh, well, this must be the gene for Parkinson's disease because we had no idea what it was involved in. So eventually, though, what we did is we went to the mouse model, which is what we usually do. And so for those that don't know, Parkinson's disease is a specific disease where you have a loss of dopaminergic neurons in the substantia nigra pars compacta, and that loss of dopaminergic neurons means you have insufficient drive to allow for planned motor behavior. And so then you can no longer, you're frozen and stiff. So why not do this in mice, right? Because we can't do it in humans, like you said. It's just unethical. So we're going to do this in mice. We're going to knock out the Parkin gene in mice. And what we find is that there's no Parkin phenotype whatsoever. Now, they do have some effects, but it's mostly has to do with like weight gain. So there's some changes in how they deal with high-fat diets and also a couple of effects on the heart. But they show absolutely no effects on Parkinson's disease. And it turns out that the Parkin gene is involved in a process of what we call mitophagy. So that's how we get rid of damaged mitochondria. Now, it does it both in humans and in mice, but the ultimate effect of knocking out this entire gene in mice leads to basically no phenotype, no Parkinson's disease. And there were millions and millions of dollars wasted on grants to identify this. Of course, they discovered interesting things about how Parkin works, but it completely violated the hypothesis that, wow, we're going to have now a way of looking at Parkinson's disease in mice by knocking out this gene. And it just didn't work at all. And there's lots of examples like that. Mice are great for lots of things, but oftentimes we find that there are important subtle differences that just completely illustrate the fact that we have to take into account that they are not tiny little humans that were perfectly designed for us allow us to discover interesting things about the way humans work. And I mean, it just kind of blows that whole hypothesis out of the water.
Well, I have a different opinion because we certainly would not have as much medical technology if we didn't have model organisms. I'm not saying that they're perfect, but they certainly have immensely helped. I can't imagine us doing medical technology and advancing our understanding of human without model organisms. That's why we have such a suite of them. And, the alternative is then to be dissecting each other. So I'm not saying that they're perfect models, and that's why we call them model organisms. But that being said, in terms of pure science, just as a scientific question, and that's why we try to subdivide this where we assume common descent. It's like, okay, we can at least argue complexity. But then, we would have, I'm just conceding to you that with an old Earth, and you look at the pattern of biology, it's hard to deny common descent. So I think we're on agreement there. And I've tried to tell creationists, don't argue that way. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to argue old Earth and you try to argue against similarity, you're going to lose. I do gene browsing a lot, and I could see genes that are 100% identical between us and chimps. I also see the patterns of pseudogenes, and I've dealt with ALU elements and ERVs. So, guys, just creationists, if you're listening, don't go there. But if the Earth is young, and I have gone from being a theistic evolutionist to an old Earth creationist to a young Earth creationist, some of the stuff in physics has started to make me think, and enough that it put enough doubt that I said, just given kind of my own, because I'm a Christian and I have, I read the Bible. It's like, okay, it seems enough of it aligns with the way that I see the scientific evidence. Just as a matter of faith, I said, I'll accept it by faith. I'm not going to pretend I have the science, but there have been certain things with radiometric dating that have only emerged like in the last year with heavy electron quasi-particles. There may be a pathway to changing nuclear structure, and that could throw everything, a monkey wrench in everything. And, my graduate degree is in applied physics, and I was very fascinated by this topic. And I think it's still kind of early in the game to kind of write young Earth creationism off. The other thing is, as I said, I had published in Population Genetics with Dr. Sanford. It's in university shelves in a book on mathematics and the arts and sciences. And the human genome is decaying. There are many titles that are saying, like, by evolutionists that say, why haven't we died 100 times over? That to me just screams that, humanity's young. And this does have medical implications and will lead to testable predictions about the direction of civilization and how long we're going to stay on Earth. And to me, that's just very sobering. And I'm just throwing it out there. And I don't know any major geneticist that thinks our genome is actually improving.
So I can say some things, Aron. I don't want to hog the whole time, and I know that you probably have some things that you'd like to say about this. So
yeah, first of all, addressing what Cindi said, we can learn nothing by assuming gods and magic. There are a number of things that we can determine about evolutionary ancestry and phylogenies and so forth, but there is nothing that pretending that we were created by a magic spell will ever avail us. There's no future in that. Cindi Lincoln never addressed evolution at all, nor does she give any indication that she even knows what it is, unfortunately. I don't think either of them listened to my opening statement, because that was explaining what evolution is. And they're going to say that, and she immediately followed that by saying that evolution is a belief. Everything that I just said about what evolution is demonstrable, measurable, verifiable. Not a bit of it is belief. This is all stuff we can verify. And then if you want to get into what I call the phylogeny challenge, if you're going to argue for a creationism, if you're going to argue that all these animals are not related, then if we get into the taxonomy, you're going to have to show me where the division is, and there isn't one. That's the phylogeny challenge. No creationist will even try to answer this. And the reason is because of difference in our perspectives. If you're a science-minded person, then you look at this as an investigation. It doesn't matter what the end result is. You just want to find out whatever's true, whatever it is. And if it's not something you wanted it to be, oh well. When I find out that something that I believed was not as well supported as I was told that it was, I don't have to have that notion disproved. It's enough to know that there was not a reason to assume it in the first place. I have already stopped believing it. But they're coming at this from a belief perspective, where they have the conclusion. They're going to make believe that conclusion. Doesn't matter what the evidence is. It does. I've had people admit to me, believers admit to me, that even if they knew it was wrong, if I had proof that it was wrong, they would still believe it anyway. So having no idea what evolution is, and I would love to fix that for Cindi. Because she's lived with Kent Hovind. She has no idea. He has no idea what evolution is. I've had to correct him on this numerous times. And I've come to the point where I know that he knows that he's full of shit. That he knows that the things that he says are not true. This is the same with all of these leading creationists. They know that they're selling a bullshit story, that none of their claims are true. So what I said was that she can't talk about evolution. She's going to have to reach past evolution to look at the origin of life instead. And that's exactly what she did. So there was nothing in here about evolution at all. And I even noticed other people were commenting that they aren't going to be looking at any kind of taxonomy, which is what evolution is all about. We're talking about phylogenies here. And other people are talking about the origin of the eye as if it was something that just poofed out of nowhere. Again, these are detailed things we can study, and it would take time to learn them. Incremental branching phylogenies for all of these. but it's a very complex subject, and then we're not even looking at it. So then she said that she mentioned that her God was apparently deceptive because he would create things that looked just like us and didn't just look like us, but also had structurally exactly like us, but also had the genome to verify that we and they are the same thing, that we are the same family, that we are apes, that humans are a subset of apes, just as chimpanzees are, just as gorillas are. And then we have the fossil record for dozens more species that no longer exist, that they were all apes too. But she's got no concept of that. Creationists don't. They just don't look at anything they don't want to see because they don't want to understand it, because if they understand it, they'll believe it. They want to believe something else. And I don't believe evolution because I want to believe it. I don't want to believe anything. I want to understand what is really true. And finally, she referenced virtue.
Wait. You have two subjects on the table and you're about to do a third, and my brain can't handle all that. I want to respond to the first, and it's kind of related to the second, if you don't mind. Okay, Sal, would you put up the Smithsonian taxonomy?
One moment, it's coming. And here you go, Cindi.
As they say in the younger generation, wait for it.
There you go.
It's not fair for you, Aron, to say that I only believe what I want to believe. Okay, you can't speak for me in that way. I don't believe that accurately represents me. From the time I was in college, I remember seeing these trees of life. And in fact, this one isn't a very good one because it doesn't really show all the different life forms. I remember seeing, wow, that starfish is hugely different than that sea cucumber. Even if you want to put them together low on the tree, they're still vastly different. And Sal is going to disagree with me on this, but the point he was making about the protein gene families being so different. Let me see if I can. Are you trying to find it? Thank you, honey. That they are so unique. They defy a common ancestor. I would say that, and this is what I was saying, Sal would disagree with me on. I would say many of the families are so different and so unique, they defy somebody saying they have a common ancestor. For me, it was just obvious looking at those trees that, you know, yeah, you could say all the cat family are related, but you can't say a cat's related to a giraffe. You might be able to, and they're all made of cells, obviously. And another thing Sal might disagree with me on is I don't believe it has to be provable that God made all of us have a nervous system, a digestive system, so that we could study it medically. That's a good idea, but I don't think it has to be proven in order to defy evolution. Personally, I think it makes sense that we all have arms and legs and mouths because we all have to walk. We all have to pick up our food. We all have to live on the same planet. We all have to breathe the same air. So for me, that makes sense. And I think that's all.
Okay, so you're talking about a subject you know absolutely nothing about. You've seen some very, very simple pictures, but these are in depth. And when you talk about how if you can say that all the cats are the same family, what do you even mean by that? And then are they in the same parent category as giraffes? Well, they are both mammals, aren't they? And if we get into details on this, you're going to have to. We could start with the simplest things and start moving backward, and you're going to realize these things are all related. And yeah, we'll just go ahead and say like your ex-husband did all that. Well, a 5-year-old can tell you they're all the same kind. Because he has to base his science.
Be like my husband, but thank you.
He has to base his science on what a 5-year-old says, because that's the limit of his understanding. But the problem is when you go back and you start looking at these details, there is not a point where you would say, okay, well, this is independent of these came from separate special creations. No, you're going to say these are related, these are related, these are related. And as we track back further and further, you're going to realize, yeah, these are all related. And when you take For any two things, you have to show up any two animals, just to keep it easy. Let's use animals. Show any two animals. You can always show differences between those two animals. You can show differences between me and Sal. I mean, if all you focus in on differences and there's only two examples, there's always going to be differences. Throw up three. Put up three animals. Two of them are going to be closer than the other one. The old Sesame Street game, one of these things is not like the other. Explore that with
Aron,
I guarantee, I can prove evolution to your satisfaction if you really are the truth seeker that you're pretending to be right now. If I am unfairly representing your belief system, if you really would change your mind if you saw the truth, let me correct your situation and you will thank me for it. I can show you how these things really are related.
That tree that Sal just put up, you do believe that that a single cell turned into all the diversity?
Can I show you all the detail on how you can know that too?
Well, can I just have a yes or no? Is that really?
That's not something I don't like to use the word believe, because we use it in a different, I use it differently than a believer does. A believer is going to make believe. Okay. If I say that I believe something, it means that this is what I think is true or closest to the truth, but I don't know that because I can't show it. I can show this.
I don't think it happened.
So this is not something I believe. This is something I know and can show.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Cindi.
If you think that all the diversity came from a single cell, I disagree.
And I can show you how to know that. But it's going to take some time. This is a very complex subject, and you haven't learned about it because it would take years to invest in it. But I can give you a short summary. I can give you a rundown in just a few different interactions, like in a discussion board or something. I can show you all the evidence you would ever need to realize, yeah, this is a thing, and change your mind forever.
I'm sorry, I don't believe you.
I know you don't believe me. Let me prove it.
Honey, I know
mutual exchanges.
And it drives me nuts. But cells produce cells, bacteria produce bacteria. I'm sorry, but it's a thing.
And that's according to the laws of evolution. There's two laws of evolution that imply that. The law of monophyly and the law of biodiversity, which your husband never understood. I constantly corrected him, and he kept saying this idiotic thing. Well, dogs produce dogs. They don't ever produce a non-dog. Yeah, you idiot, because that's what evolution allows, right? You cannot grow out of your ancestry.
Okay.
So you never stop being or whatever your ancestors
do you understand how contradictory that is?
If you don't understand what evolution
dog always
is,
stays
and I know
a
that
dog,
you don't.
If you're going to say a cell becomes a dog.
What?
I never understand your position. It seems contradictory to me to say that a dog is always going to be a dog, but a cell is going to, over millions of years, turn into a dog.
You mean dogs are not still cells?
That's playing games.
Have you ever heard of the cell theory of biology? You mentioned Virchow. He's the one that came up with that.
So, Cindi, if I can interject a little bit, I feel like you're asking origins of multicellularity. So for our model, right? And I agree with Aron that we don't believe things. We have models, we have working models. Some are better supported than others. However, all of it has some support. We wouldn't have come up with it otherwise. Now, the working model is that for billions of years, there was essentially just single-cell organisms for a long time, as far as we know. At some point, multicellularity emerged. Now, that sounds like a huge leap, but there are studies showing under natural selection, under laboratory conditions, that you can evolve multicellularity. So I'm just going to show really quickly here.
Well, there's a huge difference between a colony of multiple cells and a cohesive system that makes.
This is a cohesive system of organisms in order to respond to predation. So they were under natural selection, under predation conditions where they could, they had to respond in a certain way. And on over 750 generations, which sounds like a long time, but for algae, it isn't. they were able to develop multicellularity, and this was a permanent change. So now these organisms are now multicellular in their nature. And this happened over a period of just like weeks. And there are other studies showing similar things. So this leap of multicellularity, you could imagine then that now we have organisms that have multiple cells, and then you're going to lead to expression changing, transcription factors that evolve and change to allow expression to affect and induce change in their neighboring cells, to allow for those cells to differentiate and do different things
within a limit.
I don't know if it's within a limit. I mean, like, the limit is what?
Those different cells can be.
Because we're talking about billions of years,
can't
right?
Go from being a colony of algae into an animal of any kind.
Yeah, you're not going to see that in the lab. I would agree with that.
You're not going to see it in reality either.
Reality is a long, long time. It's a lot longer than a few thousand years. And so I want to get to that, because what is your explanation for the organization of fossils that we find in the fossil record? So we see older rocks have a certain panoply of different kinds of animals and plants, sometimes, but not even plants at certain levels. And then eventually you see different animals, you see different plants, and we see drastic changes that occur. I live in the Appalachian Mountains. I can go to some parts in this area. I do this. I go out with my kids and we go out and look for fossils. Certain areas have different fossils than other areas that are only 20, 30 miles apart from each other. If everything was specially created 6,000 years ago, why do we see fossilization in this very discrete order that follows along and in fact seems to match the genetic data and the implied data from what we have for comparative morphology? What's I want to know your explanation for that. Like, what happened? I mean, you guys are implying that there's an intelligent designer or creator that did this. How was that done? I'll stop sharing.
You're correct. We do not believe that the fossil record represents a time record. And in the Appalachians, you're quite aware that there are coal seams and oil. That is smashed up dead things by the scores. That is actually more biomaterial than exists on the planet today, which I believe indicates that the planet used to be tropical, used to be a lot more lush than it is today. That's pretty much proof of that.
By the way, since you mentioned proof, I noticed somebody else had made the comment about that. If I offer to prove something to you, I'm not doing that in terms of mathematic proof. I'm offering proof in the terms of an overwhelming preponderance of evidence beyond reasonable doubt, sufficient to convince you that, yes, we have a valid point. So I spent a couple of weeks in the desert a couple of months back. I was in Wyoming on a fossil expedition into strata that was dated to 47 million years ago. So everything we found in this remote desert area was all like freshwater lake deposits and mammals. We found rhino-like horses and horses like rhinos, because horses and rhinos are very closely related. They evolved from a common ancestor. And so there's a lot of branches intermediates that you find there. So why is it we find those there? And then a couple of years ago, I was in South Africa. I was in a different fossil area where it was dated to 243 million years ago. And everything we found there were therapsids. This is before dinosaurs. There were no mammals. So we know nobody finds mammals. But we find all these Permian things, the types of animals you would expect to find in the Permian. We can find them again in Texas, too, where I live, in the Permian Basin. So that's one of the many things that we can show. There's different layers of exposed strata that we can radiometrically date according to like when there's ash falls and stuff like that, so that we can date the range, and we're going to find certain types of fossils at each of these layers. And everywhere in the world is going to be the same types of fossils. We're never going to find a mammal in the Permian. These rhino-like horses or horses-like rhinos that I found in Wyoming from 47 million, you're not going to find one of those in the Permian. Never, ever happened. If there really was a global flood, which we know for absolutely certain there was not, and we can prove that.
We don't know that for certain.
We know
Aaron,
for absolutely certain there was not.
If you go any place on the planet, they will say to you, at one time, this whole entire area was covered by water.
And some places were not. A lot of places were, but some places were not. So we
Including
can
the
absolutely
Appalachians,
prove.
by the way. There are Ammonites on the top of those mountains.
Yep, because
Sure.
mountains rise and fall.
Creatures.
Yes, they rise and fall. I've
Yeah.
got a fossil right here. Collected this a few weeks ago. These are brachiopods. These are Ordovician brachiopods from one layer strata. And
I
yeah,
know, I
right.
have
Like
them in our
there's
science
a
center.
shell there, right? So you can see
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Yes. But then you go to other layers, and then you find, as you were saying, like we find these carbon-rich layers. Those are carboniferous. They bear carbon. That's why it's called the carboniferous layers. And that's when we had a whole different kind of panoply of organisms, primarily trees, these giant trees that didn't decompose, ended up creating coal beds. And I've got another example right here of carboniferous plant material, which you don't find, even though it's only 15 miles away, where we see this Ordovician type material. And we know that we can date these layers, and the carboniferous layers match to what we would expect that those datings to be. And Ordovician layers are 400 some million years old. And I mean, what's the explanation for that? That's not, you can't say that that's a global flood that allowed just these particular species of brachiopods to be found in layers of rock that happen to be radiometrically dated to around 420 million years ago. Or like Aron is saying, that we find these, in Permian layers, therapsid animals that are only going to be found in these Permian layers, in either the United States or in China or other countries. And the same pattern across the world.
Some places you might have evidence of a tsunami, for example. I mean, you might have Cretaceous animals that are found in what appears to be a tsunami deposit, or you might have another tsunami deposit might always be Jurassic stuff. So everything in the area is from the Jurassic. And then you can have ash falls, which also, like in China, you'll have an ash fall that covers all these Cretaceous animals. And then you have Paleozoic ash falls in the United States, like in Nebraska, where again, all Pleistocene mammals, not one dinosaur in the whole group. And that's consistent everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Nowhere on the planet ever do we have anything that matches the global flood of Noah. And there are several different ways that we know and can prove that Noah's flood never happened. Adam and Eve never happened. The Tower of Babel never happened. The Exodus
I
never
disagree.
happened.
And
Snakes
get a word in,
don't
please?
talk.
Snails don't talk.
Go for it, Sal.
Show and tell here. This is a whale fossil that I found on the coast of Virginia, where you find those Cenozoic, Pleistocene fossils. So this is a whale fossil, right? This is probably shoulder bone or something like that. I pulled this out from the coast along the Potomac, and you don't find them in Ordovician rocks. I have looked through Ordovician rocks. I don't find any whale bones whatsoever. If this is truly the result of a global flood, why can't I find waterborne mammals in those Ordovician rocks, or any mammals whatsoever? You don't find any.
Until the end of the Cretaceous, these were among the most common of all life forms in the ocean. These are Ammonites. I dug these off of a Cretaceous beach. That was one time almost the entire state of Texas was underwater, and the beach line was right around where Texas meets Oklahoma. So there are thousands upon thousands of these that built up on the beach and then were buried. So you can get where the shoreline is just covered. Thousands and thousands of these.
At one time,
And-
the whole area was covered by water. I know.
Not the whole area. That was the beach. Because if you continue on east and north, you stop. They're no longer on the beach. They're gone.
No, they're on every mountain on the planet.
No, they're not.
Cindy, may I get a word in, Cindy?
Study
Shells.
paleontology before
Go
you start
ahead.
talking to paleontologists about it, okay? No, they're not on every mountain.
I've got pictures of shells from the Andes, the Himalayas,
I know. Do you know why the Himalayas?
the
You know why?
Rockies.
Do you know why? Because the Indian
Water was that
subcontinent was
high.
once attached to Australia, broke off, and crashed into Eurasia. And what was then the ocean between them got shoved up and is still being shoved up an inch or so a year into the Himalayan mountains. That used to be seafloor.
Right.
And they can
I'd
still
I'd
measure.
like to get a word in, gentlemen. I haven't spoken for 20 minutes.
Yeah, please.
Aron, you've been talking about
Aron.
population genetic. I'm sorry, sir. Aron, no offense intended, Aron. Have you studied population genetics? Have you published in it?
No, I have not published.
Okay, I have. And you're talking about not studying things. I've studied under top evolutionary biologists. I published in population genetics. There are problems. It's not as good as you characterized. First of all, their definition of fitness is now known to be flawed. Natural selection tends to reduce versatility. Yes.
So subjective.
When
Yes.
did I ever bring up a definition of fitness?
Well, you're just talking about population genetics. It comes up. That's a field in population genetics. If you're going to bring the topic up.
What is my definition of fitness?
We're talking about faith here. You said that we ignored taxonomy.
Mm-hmm.
That's partly because cell stuff takes priority. I just showed stuff with a chromatin double-stranded break repair. How does that evolve? How does the dinosaur and fossil record explain that? That's what I'm saying. That's what we are saying are faith statements. You can't just use circularly reasoned phylogenetic methods to try to explain probabilistic problems here, because we could walk through that. We could go through the cell membrane. Dr. Chris probably teaches about chromatin and the cell membrane, nuclear import, export. How did that evolve? How does the fossil record explain that? How can you explain it in terms of phylogeny without resort to circular reasoning? These are faith statements. You cannot, these are non sequiturs to go from the fossil record to be asking all these questions about young earth creationism.
So you're the one using
it still doesn't solve it. It is a faith statement. It is not reasonable. Thank you.
You're accusing me of using a definition I never used. I never even brought up the definition. You asked me how dinosaurs explain things that evolved before dinosaurs. So you're conflating. You're doing a whole lot of non sequiturs here. Why don't we just look at the taxonomy of any specific thing, right? Start with dinosaurs if you want. Start with dogs if you want.
I told you why. I told you why. Cells take precedence over fossils.
I gave you the challenge that you, sir, cannot answer and must. If there was any
I don't have to answer it.
And we know that there is no truth to creationism. There is truth to evolution. There's things we can demonstrate to be true about evolution. There is nothing that you
protein families.
What?
The tree, you're talking about phylogenetic trees, but the tree that you grew up of the cells, what?
I don't have to really prove anything that you asked, because the problem with cell transitions makes it moot. This is a big deal. This is exactly the problem with the bent pencil. If you want to cherry pick, if you want to ignore anomalous problems, you can, and you can get a nice looking theory. I've given the single ugly fact that breaks a beautiful hypothesis. That is the eukaryotic components, the emergence of them from simpler forms, and also proteins that just don't have common ancestors. They'd have to come from nothing.
Put that up, Sal.
No, they don't. You are conflating a bunch of different non sequiturs while accusing me of the very thing that you're doing. If you want to argue for creationism, then you are the one who's ignoring everything. I gave you the thing that you must address. If you want to show that taxonomy is only good up to a certain point, you got to show me where that point is.
He did. He showed.
No, he didn't. He doesn't even know what the question means.
He showed you a taxonomic tree.
I ignored it, yes, because it is moot.
You're really good.
I have everything I put forward dwarfs your issues. This is a bigger problem.
It doesn't, Sal. You have to come up with a mechanism to explain
eukaryotic transition. If you don't have eukaryotic evolution, you don't have evolution. I showed you the problems. If you want to have evolution and pretend it doesn't exist as a problem, that's your choice.
I'm not the one pretending. Don't put words into my mouth like that, because I'm not the one pretending. I'm not the one ignoring.
We feel different.
Aron got muted.
I mean, not saying that
if you want to argue,
but I don't feel like I'm pretending.
Hold on 1 second. Okay, just to be sure that there's not too much overlap. Go ahead, Aron. We'll give you about 2 minutes. Then we'll kick it over to one of the speakers on the creation side.
Okay. If you want to argue that our taxonomy is flawed some way, that there are different kinds, like if you look back to the Noah's Ark thing, for example, you want to say that Noah didn't have every species, he only had certain kinds, and that everything evolved from there. Then give me what those examples are. Show me what those. Show me what the initial archetypes are. Show me where the taxonomy breaks down. That's the phylogeny challenge that no creationist will dare answer, because it disrupts the belief system. That's the thing you have to ignore. That's the thing you are ignoring, and then I'm not. because it has nothing to do with your protein conflation that you brought up before. Show me where the taxonomy breaks down. This is the argument. This is the very thing you are saying is happening. Show me that that is happening.
The protein configuration shows that they are so different, they could not have a common ancestor.
No, it doesn't show that, but that also doesn't address the question, does it? How does that identify which animals or what type are on Noah's Ark? How does that show where the taxonomy breaks down?
It breaks down at the cellular level.
Okay, so
It's
you're
true at
saying
the
that God
cellular
had a
level.
cell on the Noah's Ark?
I'm saying that just like those cell families are so unique, that's what we see in the animal kingdom as
Okay,
well.
so did God just create a bunch of cells? And then they
Well-
become the different animal lineages?
No, the
Are
thing
you
is,
using a red herring?
yes,
No, I'm
it is
not.
a red
No,
herring.
that's a reasonable
I-
Please.
explanation.
No, it's a red herring.
Let's
and I've
agree
told you
not
why.
to do Ken Hovinisms, okay?
Yep.
I mean, that's essentially
But I
what
said
like older
it's moot.
creationists believe, right? They believe that God maybe intervened and created life, and then
Wait,
just
I'm
let
sorry.
it run
Can
its
you
saying-
do
course.
that again?
They're saying
Right.
that
You don't
on
have
Noah's
proof.
Ark, that Noah had a bunch of cells.
Yeah.
We don't have the
Don't put words in my
archetype that
mouth.
begins, I don't know, cats, or is it carnivore, or is it Phalloidea? Where is the root of all of these clades? And she just said cells.
Those are irrelevant questions relative to the problem of cells.
Directly
You don't have
pertinent.
eukaryotic evolution. You don't
If
have
you're gonna
evolution.
argue-
I
if you're
have
gonna
put
argue that all cats are
forward
not related,
problems
that-
you have to solve as
you're gonna
evolutionists
argue
if you're going to
that
say it
cat-
evolved.
One sec, just to be sure that
If
we
you're
hear
gonna
each
argue
side.
that cats
We'll break it
and
into 2 minutes.
giraffes,
we'll
for
do 1 minute
example-
responses. Go ahead, Aron. 1 minute.
If you're
You
going to
might
argue
need
that
the mute
cats
button.
and dogs
All
or
right.
giraffes
Not
or
Cindi.
whatever, wherever the category is that you want to put the divider, if you want to say that there is a divider, you have to show me the justification for your claim. Where is it that the taxonomy closes down? So the specific things to look at Noah's Ark. What did Noah have on his ark that was the archetype to begin what clade?
I don't follow that question, but everybody knows there are different families, and even you would say one of the categories is family.
Yeah, and we are in the ape family. Specifically, we are in the great ape family.
That's your opinion. And
That's
I
not an opinion. That's demonstrated
think
fact.
there's some
It's been organized like that for
morphological and
centuries.
genetic similarities, but there are some
That
differences.
not just similarities
that don't
that are
cross lines.
definitive, that define us as great apes. And we are worse than that. We are in the taxonomic superfamily of Hominoidea, which is the larger classification of apes. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. So you want to show me where the taxonomy breaks down. Show me what Noah had on his ark. Give me the archetypes. Look at the cladogram for cats, the cladogram for dogs, the cladogram for whatever you want to look, and see how far down it goes. And show me
That
where
would
the
be
divider is. Show me where
my
two things
challenge
that
to
scientists
you.
say, well, these two are related to the common ancestors here, and you'll say no, that there's no. They're independent creations. Show me where that happened.
Apes and humans. Show
We
me
are apes.
a common ancestor that
We are apes.
show it to me.
Look it up. Google it. What is hominoid?
Show me how a cell turns into a monkey.
You just changed the question. You just changed the question again. So
Well,
again, we go back to
putting
Noah's
it
Ark
back
having
on
all
cells
these
turn
cells
into
on it.
monkeys.
What, hun?
No
Did you
one's
say that
claiming
Noah's
that
Ark had
cells
only
turn into
cells on it?
monkeys.
What? That's what you believe. That's what the whole.
No, you're not going to put a cell in a
diagram.
dish and then have a monkey jump out of it. That is not the claim. The claim is that
No,
there's
but
been
over
billions of
millions of
years
Yeah.
of life on Earth, that for billions of those years we had single-celled organisms where we don't have a fossil record of, but what your table shows, the tree that you had from the Smithsonian, basically if you look at the different branches, you get to the eukaryotic organisms and you have the three major branches, the fungi, the animals, and the plants. And they're just one long, little tiny branch off. If you look at the vast array of the single cellular organisms that are out there. Now, this is getting way out of my specialty.
Yeah.
I'm a neuroscientist. I study animals, but I know that there's a huge range of genetic variability we can find across a wide range of unicellular organisms, billions of years, allowing for, and abiogenesis is a tough question. I'm not going to say that it isn't. And it's also way outside of my field of expertise. However, we know that we can have change and mutation that leads to adaptation and change that can occur within animals. And we can look for in the fossil record of this genetic change, for instance. So we can look at, we have now the genome of Neanderthals. Do you believe Neanderthals were humans or were they apes? What is your opinion?
Idea, however,
can I get a word in?
There's something
Cindi,
called
please.
stasis.
Cindi, can I get a word in?
Yeah,
Yes.
I need to correct what Chris just said there. Asking whether Neanderthals were humans or apes is like asking whether a Corvette is a Chevy
You're right.
or a car.
I'm sorry, non-human apes, I should say. Yes.
Because I mean, Neanderthals were both humans and apes.
Yes, and humans are humans and apes. I agree, and thank you for the correction. Yes, were they human or were they a kind that are apes that were specially created? That's what I'm trying to ask. For me,
Okay. All right, Cindi, can I get a word in? Can I get 2 minutes, James?
Sure.
Okay, I got my timer. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Please. This is a topoisomerase enzyme. It is homodimeric. I published on this enzyme. We estimate 60 some interface points to make this. This is difficult. I asked evolutionists how this evolved. They just give me these circularly reasoned phylogenetic explanations. It has nothing to do with taxonomy, but we would be dead without this. It also has to have reformatting in the nuclear localizations and a lot of other things in the prokaryote to eukaryote transition. There are other things with proteins that people seem to not ignore. That's one of my co-authors, published in Nature. And we'll skip this. We can talk about topoisomerases. This is the phylogeny. It's a mess. And I have 1 minute to go. One of the problems in protein architecture is the fit. There needs to be proper charge distributions and shaping so we can get these induced fits. Delving into taxonomy doesn't solve this. I ask evolutionists all the time, how does this evolve? They say, we don't know. We have just a phylogenetic thing. It's a faith statement. And to say that somehow you look at the fossil record and you can claim these things, these complex systems like this, like the EZH2 can evolve, that's a non sequitur. And until you can answer that,
Sounds good.
you have a faith statement. That is not science. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate your passion for the Sal. I am not an expert in topoisomerase for sure. However, I did a little bit of looking into topoisomerase. I'd like to share my screen if I could. 1 second here.
I also have to add that if we say that we don't know something, that's not a faith statement. Not having the answer, but saying that you do have the answer, that's the definition of a faith statement. So Sal saying that he knows that was a god, or that he has reason to believe that that's a god, that's a faith statement. That's not what we're doing. I asked him a question he refuses to answer, so he needs to change the subject.
So this is, we've touched on model organisms. I made up based on this link below, kind of added to it and changed it a little bit. I made this phylogeny, myself, sort of stealing some of the things and elements from this link below. And this is illustrating some of the what we know to be the last point when there was a common ancestor between humans and chimps was around 10 million years ago, probably a little bit less than that. For humans and mice, around 90 million years ago. Chicken and frog and zebrafish, much older, hundreds of millions of years ago. And then you get into the invertebrates where genetic difference as well as other things, around 990 million years ago, billion years ago, before the Cambrian explosion. Now, what we know is that organization of 450 million years ago, we don't find humans in those fossil records. But the other thing is that we see sorting of genes as we go through, and anyone can do this. Anyone can go and look. So you can go and use certain resources that are available from the NCBI database, and Sal, I'm sure you're more than familiar with this. You can do a BLAST search. So this is topoisomerase 1. I know you were showing us topoisomerase 2, but this is topoisomerase 1, where I blasted the sequence of the human topoisomerase to Pan-Troglodontes, which is the chimp. And lo and behold, it's 100% identical, no difference whatsoever. And here's the sequence. You can see this is the human version. All these little letters represent different amino acids. And then here's the chimp version, 100% similar. Now, when you go to a different animal model, the mouse, now we start to see differences. We see substitutions, we see insertions. As Sal pointed out, topoisomerase is pretty important, does important functions in the cell, but we're seeing mutations and differences that occur. As you go down in phylogenetics, now we see additional differences. Now we're comparing humans to chicken and even more substitutions and insertions and deletions. You get to something like the fruit fly, now we have a huge range of insertions and deletions. And of course, if you can go through, and anyone can do this, you pick your favorite gene. You can go to the NCBI database, type in NCBI gene, type in a gene that you like. You can find the human one. That's usually the first one that shows up. And then it'll say run blast. And you can run it. And that blast means that you can choose to compare that gene to thousands of other genomes. And you can compare it to a chimp genome, then compare it to the frog genome, one of my favorite animals since I work with it. And what you'll see is that percent identity of human genes to, say, chimps is going to be quite high. When you get to mice, it's less. Then chickens, it's less. And frogs and zebrafish, it's less. Because we know, and this is going to be the consistent pattern that you're going to find, not only with other genes, but also topoisomerase. It's the same thing. And so if this is something that's so specially created, that's so critical, why is it that the amino acid sequence can be as much as, over 35% different between humans and the roundworm and have it still work?
I have the answer.
Shouldn't it just be plug and play, right? And why do we even have any differences?
Actually, it's not plug and play.
Okay.
We found, by the way, if you'll indulge me, Dr. Chris,
sure.
Scholarly discussion. Thank you very much for looking into that. I'll confirm for the audience what Dr. Chris presented is what I see as well. So he's an excellent scientist. I earlier mentioned the direct coupling analysis. The differences between creatures enables us to do this protein fold prediction. It's a testable prediction if you remove some of the sets who are not able to do it that indicate design. Now the specialty, we can take human topoisomerase, put it in yeast, topoisomerase 2 alpha, beta, put it in yeast. You cannot do the reverse. We didn't actually do it in our experiment. We went from a yeast to a mouse, thing died. The reason is that there are post-translational modifications on the C-terminal domain that are optimized for the multicellularity and the complexity of the human. So you ask why there are differences. In some cases, it's very species specific. You'll see like on the C-terminal domain, maybe 50 more locations for post-translational modifications. You'd only get maybe 5 to 10 on the yeast. So there is, for organisms that are not very complex, there's a lot of toleration for variability. Also, just because you have a phylogenetic diagram does not imply that it evolved, because without the topoisomerase, one is dead. The other thing is when one is going from the bacterial gyrase form to like the eukaryotic form, it has to go from a tetrameric form to a homodimeric, and then their nuclear localizations need to be inserted. These things are like fatal in the process of the evolutionary transition. Just because we have all these fossils and taxonomies, I'm not trying to say I'm changing the subject because I want to avoid it. I'm just saying it's moot. It doesn't solve this problem. And you can accept that it happened, but you can't do so based on any direct evidence except phylogeny or belief in evolution. Right. Therefore, it's a faith belief.
No, Sal, I didn't show any unicellular topoisomerase there.
Yes.
This is all multicellular. So why are there these differences amongst multicellular organisms? If there's just a designer, like you're not going to find designers that if you go to a factory, they're not going to create new types of little plug-and-play things to put into each like computer. If you're designing computers,
experimental evidence
and put it in, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Apologies, Dr. Thompson.
That's fine.
I just wanted to say we have experimental evidence. It has to do with the post-translational modifications. There's some slight things with hydropathic properties that are optimized for the creature. There was someone, I forgot his name, he published on that. So there are some optimizations there, but also I have been studying the post-translational modifications. The difference in amino acids, like the residues for like serine and threonine, will enable different phosphorylation states that will change the conformation of the C-terminal domain, and that may be cell type specific in the way it works. So it's a good question, We know humans are particularly sensitive to changes. That's why you could take a human topoisomerase, dump it in a yeast, the yeast lives. You can't go the reverse. And in fact, the differences even happen in the paralogs of topoisomerase, even in the same human genome. We have the alpha and beta isoforms. And we were wondering, why do we have two? Well, we knock out one, there's sickness. So we have experimental evidence to address some of your claims, not all of them. By the way, thank you again. I didn't mean to interrupt you. My sincere apologies, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I still want to know, I mean, did Noah have every species of dog and every species of bovid and all of that on his ark, or did he have like archetypes and then you have other species evolve from that archetype?
I think I like your answer, Aaron. You thought
Aron.
I'm very sorry.
Need a cattle prod, Aron.
It's just that I thought of that name. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to.
No worries. But so you accept? Do you accept that, or do you believe that Noah had every species that exists today?
No.
Or did he have archetypes which then evolved into the different species we have today?
I believe, can't prove, but I think when you were in the debate with Charles Jackson and he pointed out the wolf-like ancestry, I agree with that.
Okay, so you accept evolution happens.
Not from a single cell.
Change. I accept that definition of change happens.
So you accept macroevolution by definition, the emergence of new species at or above the species level, including the genus level and sometimes even the family level, according to Kent Hovind.
I never thought of it.
Okay, so you accept
because I don't like the definition.
It's not just a belief.
I'll tell you why.
Okay, but you accept that evolution happens and that it's not just a belief.
I accept that some evolution happens, but it doesn't explain all the features of life.
We can go back past to the formation of life, back to the formation of the properties that you want to argue for, but we're talking about evolution today. That's the purpose of the debate. So I just want to get a concession. You accept that evolution happened. So now let's talk about the creationist argument on Noah's Ark. If he didn't have all of the different species, then he had archetypes for the beginnings of the different species. And the creationist argument is that all of taxonomy is correct, but only at the surface. And then they want to cut off some little roots for archetypes. If you're going to make an argument that there was a creator, and then you have to come up with the origins of these archetypes. You can't avoid that. The only thing you've come up with so far is that God made cells, but that means that everything from the cell on evolved. If you want to talk about evolution, or if you want to say that there is no evolution, then you have to show where the creation began. Well, you can't say there's no evolution. You have to accept that the evolution was at some point. Evolution is a given. We both accept that evolution happens, but you're going to contest that God made some of these and some of these. Well, some of what? Where is the point that he created things?
That's a very good question. And my answer is I gave examples: nuclear localization signals, chromatin.
Cells. So cell formation.
No, cell parts.
God created
specific
cells,
cell parts. Specific
and everything
cell
after
parts.
that evolved.
And I gave probabilistic reasons why it had to be there, because it's
So
going
you
to be
didn't
dead
answer
if
the
it's not
question at
there.
all.
I'm sorry.
Did Noah have a bunch of cells on his ark, or did he have different types of animals that were created by your God?
I don't know, and I don't think I need to answer it to believe that God.
I knew you didn't think he would answer. Remember when I said so many times that this is the creationist argument? They have to answer, but will not.
It's ridiculous to say that we believe cells were on the ark. Okay, that's insulting.
Then quit saying it.
You're busted.
Quit saying it.
I didn't.
If you don't want me to make fun of you for repeating it, quit repeating it.
No, sir.
So what is the archetype? What did Noah have? So let's look at the taxonomy of any given animal you like and see how closely related they are. Like what I brought up with Jackson, right? You accept that wolves and dogs are related, right? Evolution, right? You get that? Domestic dogs and wolves, you accept that they're evolutionarily related, right?
I don't know. I wasn't there. It seems to me like there's a big difference between a domestic dog and a wolf.
Okay. It seems to you. What kind of evidence would determine whether something was related by evolution or not?
What you're trying to do is make me do really specific when I'm trying to do broad.
I know you're trying to avoid the detail because that's where the devil is.
I'm trying to say that the tree that Sal put up from the Smithsonian, where all the diversity we see today came from a single cell, is ludicrous.
Okay.
I don't think it happened.
Do you accept?
Special creation
that Noah,
of each of the individual kinds.
Okay. Do you accept that Noah, or do you believe that Noah had all modern species on the ark, or that he had archetypes that then evolved into all the modern species?
I have not contemplated that question, nor do I think it's really relevant.
It's immediately pertinent. It is your claim. If you're arguing that evolution didn't happen, you're either saying, and you've said over and over and over again, that cells, that God made cells.
No, I didn't say that, honey. You said that. I said that.
We know that at some point that there's evolutionary ancestry. You accept that, or you don't, but Sal does. Sal accepts that there's an evolutionary ancestry. Your ex-husband accepted that there was an evolutionary ancestry. He just refused to say where it stops. And he wouldn't look at the details because he knows that's where the devil is.
Well, even if you do the wolf dog thing, that's still canine. It's not related to feline.
What if you go further?
Created. So
What if you go further?
Tree, it's an orchard.
Right. Where is the root of the orchard?
It doesn't matter.
It matters entirely. It is your argument. It's what your argument is. The crux of what your argument is based on. If you want to say that God created cells, okay, fine. God created cells. And from there, they all evolved into everything.
Stop saying that I said that when I didn't.
You said it over and over again. If you don't want to say that, quit repeating it. What is the definition then? What things did you accept are evidently related by evolution, and where is the cutoff? That's your argument. You have to say where that is.
I don't need to know that. For me personally.
Then why are you in a debate on that topic?
We're in a debate about evolution or creation.
Right. And you're refusing to even understand your own side of this argument.
You agree with the Smithsonian tree that Sal put up? Is that your belief?
I don't have a belief in this case. I have what we can demonstrate.
Call it what you will. Okay. That I'm saying, I thought that's what the debate was. Either that happened or special creation happened, which you call abracadabra. I call it let there be. Okay.
So let's say that there's a let there be, and that God comes out of whatever and goes abracadabra, I create as I speak, and poof, you have cells.
No.
And those cells evolve.
Specially created kinds.
And then those cells evolve. And now Noah
I don't believe that.
So Noah doesn't or does have cells on his ark. What is it?
Like I said, Aron, I never said that. You said I said that.
So did Noah have all of the modern species? Did Noah have all of the modern species on his ark?
I would like to get off this dead horse.
Then don't get into a debate on evolution if you're not prepared to talk about what evolution is.
If I may get a word in just briefly, Cindi, if that's all right. If it began, as Cindi said, it came from a single cell, and if that cell is prokaryotic, it's going to have to split off into a eukaryote. I described all the problems that haven't been solved, and they are gigantic. Okay, I'm not just the one who said this. These are top evolutionary biologists recognize this is a serious problem.
So
we can just wave it away and say that we're dodging the issue, but I showed a major problem, so we could at least say one member of the eukaryotes, one member of the prokaryotes had to be created. There's at least a divide there. There's at least one created kind of each. And if you want to go further, you can subdivide it, but it's irrelevant to the question of what Cindi pointed out. Do you believe that it comes from a single cell? I gave reasons that have to be explained if you're going to believe it. And right now, it's just a faith belief on your part. You have not explained all the mechanistic details that are very serious that you can add probabilities to. You can actually look at the molecules. I tried to show that. If you want to ignore it, I'm
not the one ignoring everything. You have said many times you don't have to answer the question that you are ignoring. That is the thing you are ignoring. So you're saying that Noah just had Ichthyostega on board this ark, and that's it, and just all tetrapods evolved from that? Or is there something a little bit more precise than that?
Straw man.
Yeah.
It's not
I'm
a
not-
straw
it's a
man.
straw man.
It's critical to the
If Noah
argument.
didn't have every modern species, if some of those modern species evolved, then how far back does it go? Do we go all the way back to the root of all tetrapods?
I don't
Or
have
is
to
it
answer
somewhere
that
in the middle?
question if
Yes,
I
you
believe
do.
that eukaryotes and prokaryotes were independently created. I gave good reasons
Which one
why.
is
And I don't need to answer about
Noah.
Noah. There are people that may not even believe in Noah's Ark and are creationists of some variety.
Sure, but you guys have already said that. Okay, I guess. Do you believe that there was a flood, Sal?
I personally believe it. I cannot defend it as I have defended some of the other things here
Okay, why do you believe it then?
because I think enough. Oh, that's a really good question. I believe it because as I've studied the evidence, more and more aligns with the Bible. I've seen a trend over 40 years as I've watched the creation evolution controversy. And as I've watched it develop, the trend has been favorable more toward the young earth view. So kind of just by way of extrapolation, and that's a faith statement, that I'm tending to believe it more literally. And I see that stronger each day, especially now because of the genetic entropy argument. I don't think humanity has long to live. I think humanity has been recent. That confirms the genealogy of Jesus Christ, central to the Christian faith. And therefore, that genealogy interpreted literally would suggest to me the earth is young.
So
I have now started to study heavy electron quasi-particles. I think radiometric dating could be flawed. And I'm excited about where this could go in the next 10, 20 years. That's a faith statement. I admit it's a faith statement. I don't pretend that part of young earth creationism is primetime science.
Well, then don't project your faith onto me either, because I don't have a faith statement. So I can show actual facts that are positively indicative of evolution and exclusively concordant with evolution and that contradict creationism. Can you show any actual fact that we both accept is an actual fact, something that we can both verify to be true, that is also indicative of the creationist position?
I'd like to say, Aron, that you have stated repeatedly that those things are true, that
What
that
things are true?
full
wanna give you-
evolution is demonstrable and that creation is
Do you
falsified.
not accept that?
You
that
have
dog-
not
like,
shown either.
You do accept. Well,
I haven't.
Sal accepts that all the canids are related by evolution, right? Whether you
That
do or
doesn't
not.
mean the
You asked
canids are
for-
related to the plants.
I'll give you
or-
I'll give you two testable predictions.
Before you do
Yeah.
that, I just want to give you all a 2-minute heads up, and then we've got to go to the Q&A.
Okay.
Two testable predictions. The human genome is going to continue to deteriorate. We won't last long as a species. Also, the geomagnetic field, you can actually look it up at Wikipedia. It's predicted to be gone in 1600 years. That would be suggestive that it hasn't been around that long. Civilization will end. And that
Okay,
is
so you
suggestive
don't
of the young
have-
Earth. That is suggestive. These are testable predictions. We may not see it in our lifetime, but civilization will see these borne out. And
But the
it's
answer
kind
to
of
the
sad,
question,
and that's one of the reasons. Just to answer Dr. Chris, that's one of the reasons I believe this. Had a famous geneticist go from atheist to creationist. A lot of billions of people saved by his invention. He studied the genetic entropy hypothesis. I strongly agree with
okay, so
his concerns. It does not square with evolution. It squares with a young Earth creation, that young life creation that happened recently. Our genomes are decaying. I had lots of papers here. If you wanted to actually converse, I have so much evidence that our genomes are decaying, not consistent with gradual evolution or improvement as Darwin had supposed.
can you show
I
me
can give you about a minute
an
or so.
actual fact that we can verify to be true that is also indicative of the creationist position? That was the question.
I gave you two right there. If it's
You
if
gave
that
you
doesn't-
gave me a prediction. Just wait 1,600 years to see if you're right.
we have evidence of the geomagnetic field already declining substantially in the
And
last
how
200
does
years.
that
Direct
support
measure
your position?
I tried to explain.
We've got to go.
Extrapolate that, and well, anyway, I'll let you go ahead and ask. Go ahead, James. I'll be quiet. If Cindi, if you want to talk, go ahead. You can make some closing.
We have got about 8 seconds, and then we've got to go into the Q&A because we do have to quick rush through a lot of questions as we want to go through these as fast as possible. It was just such a good discussion that I didn't want to interrupt it, but want to say thank you very much for your questions, folks. We're going to jump right into these. This one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question. This one from Fernandez T says, we cannot prove there is a God. If we could, it wouldn't be faith. Christians require faith, and don't ask us to explain it. Either you have eyes to see or not. Any responses from anyone on the panel?
Yes, please. I wanted to state that earlier when Aron was talking about a similar situation. My faith in God came when I realized that God came to earth and showed his face, wrote a book, and talked to us. And he proved it by healing the sick and raising from the dead.
None of which actually happened.
In your opinion.
This one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question as well. Deej says, John Wick bent that pencil. I don't get the joke. Cameron Hall says, can the creationists give an explanation for the human chromosome number 2 fusion proving our ancestry with all the other apes?
No, there's a dispute even among creationists whether fusion actually happened or not. So you'll get answers from both sides. Charles Jackson thinks it probably fused. So sorry, that's the best. Thank you for the super chat and everything.
You got it. And one last thing is we usually do a topic or a poll topic of subtopics that we ask the audience, what do you most want to see the audience, or I should say the guests, discuss before we wrap up? The number one thing was transitional fossils. So we're going to jump back into the Q&A, but I do want to give a chance because I forgot to do this before the Q&A, is transitional fossils. Any thoughts? Maybe we take 5 minutes just to talk about this really quick because we do want to honor this subtopic selection poll from the audience. Transitional fossils, thoughts in about 5 minutes.
Creationists are divided on this. I argue vigorously there are transitional fossils in the sense of architectures, just like you can say transitions in cars. But what you can't have is transitional protein parts in the major families. I demonstrated that rather forcefully tonight. And by the way, other evolutionary biologists will back me on that, surprisingly. So you don't have like a common ancestor to the parts of a car, like the piston, the gas, the gas can, the spark plug, etc. But you can kind of build a phylogeny transitioning from primitive cars to the modern day ones. And likewise, I would say that we do see a progression from simple forms morphologically to more complex, and there's kind of a nice transition. So creationists are divided on this, so it depends on which one we'll say. Creation Ministries International has said of the arguments not to use as a creationist is don't say there are no transitionals. Just dump the topic altogether.
You got it. Aron and Dr. Thompson, any?
Sure.
Yeah, in my book, Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, I give a list of some 400 transitions according to the strictest definition of that term. And we know of now, well, that was just within vertebrates, and that just within vertebrates. We'd actually have knowledge of thousands of transitions. And these are all consistent, not just morphologically transitional and genetically transitional in many cases, but they're also chronologically appropriate. They're in the right places in the fossil record.
You got it.
Absolutely. Yeah, if I could add to that. So, Aron's 100% correct. We have hundreds of different examples of transitional fossils. You mentioned one of the more famous ones, Ichthyostega, which we've got several different kinds of specimens that have been identified. It's called Ichthyostega because it got that name because it looks like a fish, kind of, but it also has legs. And we have examples of this. And Aron, you have your question about, was this also on Noah's Ark? It's a very important question because you have to make what we know about the fossil record and biogeography work with your model, with your mechanism. It's not enough to just punch holes into the fact that we don't have great explanations for how certain protein families evolved from other protein families. You're asking for something that happened way, way, way in the past for which we don't have any fossil record for. We could talk about evolution of certain proteins, though, as well, then how they infect morphology. And we can even look at genetics in fossils like Neanderthals, which is a very sort of minor transitional fossil between humans and a common ancestor that we had with the other great apes. But there are lots of examples of hominid evolution and transitional fossils as well. You look at the Australopithecines, those animals had a pelvis that indicated that they had upright bipedal locomotion, but they had a brain case that was incredibly small. And as you look at more and more recent rocks, well, 2 million years ago, 1 million years ago, you see the evolution. Well, we see the emergence of now the genus Homo, that now we have larger brain case and still upright bipedalism. You have to have some kind of explanation for what was Australopithecus africanus. Was that an animal? Was that a human? Was that an ape? It's bipedal. Was it on Noah's Ark? That's another important point that's just not being addressed whatsoever.
You got it. Any thoughts, Cindi, before we jump back into the Q&A?
Yes, but I lost what it was. If I think of it, I'll bring it back up.
You got it. And this question coming in from Cameron Hall says, can the creationists... Got that one. Sunflower says, Aron, Sal made several points about specific topics in evolutionary biology and physics. Let's see. This one, just, we're looking for substantive questions, folks. That one looked like it was at first, but then Mr. Monster says, all mammals are related. Fact, all vertebrates are related. Fact, can you debunk these facts? Creationists.
Can you prove
Yes, if the Earth is young, they are separate special creations. As we said, there will not be enough time for evolution. I gave testable predictions that would be consistent with that. We'll see in time.
I would also predict that radiometric dating is going to be shown to be incorrect or unreliable.
Yeah, I got to bring up that, whenever creationists come up with a testable thing like a prediction, when they say that there's never going to be a purpose for a half a wing, and then we discover lots of purposes for half a wing, and we're never going to find a fossil of an animal that has half a wing, and then we find a bunch of fossils for dinosaurs that had half wings, and it just every time they make these predictions, you're never going to find a transitional species. Yeah, well, here they are. You're never going to find a fish with feet. Well, here's a bunch of them. Just all
I don't see any slides, Aron. I don't
What?
see any slides.
You don't see what?
Any slides.
I would be happy to show you
Everything
Like I
you're
said,
saying, because
I
that's...
tried to invite you, and I mean this sincerely. I want to help you because I know that you've lived in this dark place. You don't even know that it's dark, but
Oh, it's way darker than you realize. It's way darker than any of us realize.
I'll just allow that to be true because I'm afraid you're right. So, but let me help you understand this topic because it will not take long for me to show you this topic so that you will understand it. I would like just a chance, like I said.
Dapper Dino spent 6 hours on the phone with me, and he ended up pulling his hair out.
You are not beyond help. I said, I'll give you a limit. 24 mutual exchanges. I will show you everything you need to know.
This one coming in
Will
from...
you also listen? Because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be convinced.
Bubblegum.
Go ahead, James.
Bubblegum Gun says, Dr. Thompson, can you please name me one single intermediate between the gray wolf and the Dalmatian dog, or are the intermediates simply abstract data to fill in the gaps?
It's a great question. Yeah, so okay, is that Cindy's question?
If he can't, I can.
I'm mocking. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm happy to let Aron fill in some of the gaps of what I'm going to be talking about. But the thing is, there's been artificial selection for dogs, and it's something that actually is relatively rapid. And we know that when you do artificial selection, this is something that you can induce enormous change within just a handful of generations. So there's a great experiment that was done by Dmitry Belayev, a Russian scientist in Siberia in the 1950s going up till today, of doing selection for tameness in wild foxes. And within 20 generations, he was able to get a line of foxes that are essentially like little dogs, and with emergence of traits that he didn't even select for, such as floppy ears and piebald coloration and curly tails. All he was selecting is for tameness. And so you can imagine that you're not going to have fossilization occur for just 20 generations. So we're going to find gaps, like when you're talking about very small differences between, say, wolves and dogs. But Aron, perhaps you could fill that in because I know you know quite a bit about this topic.
Well, on the evolution of dogs, I mean, they were looking for the specific they're looking for the specific breed of Dalmatian. And what you have to identify is that we know that domestic dogs come out of 4 different genetic strains from Asiatic wolves. I'm not sure which of the strains the Dalmatian is on, but we can identify which strain that is. I mean, we'd have to look at the genetic study for it,
Right.
but we can identify which strains the Dalmatians are on. I can't remember off the top of my head whether they're what are they, terriers or whatever. I don't know.
There's a ton of information on there on the Dog Genome Project. You can look this up.
But you're not going to go direct.
Studies.
You're not. My point is, you're not going to go direct to Dalmatians because there's a lot of intermediate studies. It's like you don't ever go from wolf to dachshund, but you could go from wolf to wolfhound to bloodhound to basset hound to dachshund. Something like that. You have these gradation steps. But what you're going to have to trace is not the fossils in this case; it's the genome.
And in the genome, so that emerged out of that Dog Genome Project, we know that they're these small breeds, and they identified the gene that was modified, that there's a mutation that arose, and that allowed for small breeds, and it's essentially related to dwarfism.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Deej says, do evolutionists believe we evolved from pond scum, as some particular individual says sometimes?
I would never refer to my forefathers as scum. I have much more respect for them. So
I also don't consider what Sal had mentioned before about prokaryotes and eukaryotes. The transition between prokaryotes and eukaryotes is not an evolutionary transition. I mean, endosymbiosis may have been accepted in the modern evolutionary synthesis, but it is not, because of the horizontal gene transfer, it doesn't, to me, qualify as an ancestor-descendant relationship, and therefore doesn't meet the definition of descent with inherent modification. You have to have an ancestor-descendant relationship in order for it to be evolution.
And if you don't have an ancestor-descendant relationship, you have special creation.
This one coming in.
Poofed out of nothing. No.
This one from G-Man's, let's see, Brandon
G-Man?
No,
I have a question.
it was a fake username. They said G-Man's manager. Go ahead, Cindi.
Okay. The whole dog thing. Okay. You can select certain genes to make certain kinds of dogs. But in the selection pool, there is certain options not available.
Until there's mutation to produce them.
But can you have a dog mutation that's going to make something different than a dog? Like,
once again, I told you that the laws of evolution include the law of biodiversity and the law of monophyly, neither of which allows a descendant to grow out of its ancestry. You still belong to all of the ancestral clades that your parents did. Even if you start a new clade to which they don't belong, you still belong to everything. You are still everything that they were.
I've heard that argument before. It doesn't answer the question for me. There's still a pool of selection, a pool of genes available in the dog gene pool that is never going to give you a rat tail or a platypus nose or any other thing.
There are mutations that could do those things. I mean, you can have mutations, and then you can select for those unique mutations when they occur. Mutations are the source of new genetic information. But just because you have a dog with a rat tail or a platypus nose doesn't mean it's no longer a dog. The law of monophyly means it still belongs to all of those ancestral clades. It doesn't stop being what its parents were.
But a nose of a platypus
would be a dog with the nose of a platypus.
It's like a complete system. The platypus is a complete system. They're all complete.
Are you saying that a dog should turn into a platypus, or a dog would have a platypus nose?
I'm saying evolution isn't possible because of the limited selection in the gene pool.
What you're saying is evolution isn't possible because evolution doesn't do what it's impossible for evolution to do, which is to turn a dog into a non-dog. Because I'm sorry, your husband was always wrong about this. All the millions of times he repeated that lie, it was always wrong. There was never in evolutionary history, never ever in evolutionary history did one kind of thing ever turn into or give birth to a fundamentally different kind of thing. Never
Well, then
happened.
that Smithsonian tree is wrong.
No, the Smithsonian tree is correct because it doesn't say that.
We must
The
jump
two are
It never
mutually
has anything
exclusive. It
turning
makes
into
no
a
sense.
fundamentally different kind of thing that its ancestors were.
just to get through more questions from the audience. This one coming in from Victor Hallock says, for creationists, do you believe that protecting our children is the most important thing we need to do as adults? How can you justify teaching them that these quote-unquote stories are real and harm them?
We would say the same thing about evolutionists.
Except that we can show that evolution is true. You can't show fact one for creationism. I can show you that we can
We would
observe
say the
evolution.
same thing about
I can show you how we can trace evolution. You can't show there's any truth at all to creationism. None.
You just said that you can't show that the Smithsonian tree is true.
I just said that what the Smithsonian tree says is not what you said it does. It never says that one thing turned into another fundamentally different kind of thing. That never happened.
We just to go back to their question.
If I
Victor
may
Hallock,
answer that, can I answer that question?
from the one from the audience?
Yes.
Yes.
How can I justify it? Because there's no salvation in evolutionism. There is salvation in Jesus Christ.
There's no such thing as evolutionism.
This one from Anton Gomez says, question for the Yes Evolution team. A creationist told me the immune system is irreducibly complex. Is this true?
No.
This one from Pocket Locker 86 says, hi, Brother Sal. I really enjoyed your performance tonight. I hope we can chat soon. You were right. I need a hug. Hope you're doing well. And Melody Kate says, humans believe their God created animals to be humans' slaves, to be dissected and eaten. Are humans God's creatures he can torture and destroy to practice his desire to murder with?
God doesn't have a desire to murder. He's got a good point, Sal.
There's this book called the Bible that contradicts that idea an awful lot
He judges evil.
and then demands the death
He
penalty for
exposed-
everything.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah, including he even demands that you get an abortion if you suspect that your wife has cheated on you, that you should force her to have an abortion against her will. That's in Numbers 5. And in Numbers 31, it says you can take preteen children and slaughter their families and keep the little girls as your own personal sex slaves. There's all kinds of things wrong in the Bible.
Aron, that is not characteristic of the God of the Bible. I have not read.
It's not. The guy who said that female slaves are half price of male slaves, that's not characteristic. I'm sorry, this is a different topic. We can argue religion at some other time. I just want to bring up something else. Sal and Cindi both agreed that new species do evolve. So there are comments in the chat that said that I showed no facts. Well, we have an agreement. They evolve. Species
I don't
evolve
believe
by
I
means
did.
of natural selection. Exactly what Darwin said. They accept that evolution happens.
I don't believe
You
I
can
did.
call it you can call it microevolution, but that would be incorrect because it's the origin of new species. That's macroevolution by definition. So you don't get to just say that it's micro, but then you don't get to show that there's micro creation either, because you got nothing. Where's the creation? I can demonstrate evolution, demonstrate creation for me.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Hates Stairs says, excellent debate other than mispronouncing Appalachia. I don't know. Victor Halleck says, Aron, Ron Wyatt and Bob Cornuke proved Noah's flood happened. Checkmate. I don't know what they're referring to.
I have an 8-part series proving that Noah's flood didn't happen. You can look it up on my channel.
You got it. This one from Spartan Theology says, LOL should debate Jay Bundy. Who should debate Jay Bundy?
I think he's referring to me. We have a long history. His team was competing with mine. My team was Michael Behe, Robert Marks, and William Dembski. His was Linsky, Pennock, and Adami. So this is like a 15-year history.
You got it. And this one coming in from, do appreciate it. Pocket Locker says, James, I should debate Sal next. He is afraid of me. All right. Samir says behavior is not passed on in DNA. How do you explain orphan dogs know to bury his bones for later retrieval, if not information loaded outside of DNA?
There's a ton of things like that. There's a ton of things not explained by chemistry or DNA. How come your
It is.
when you're crying? How come your dog comes up to you?
It comes up to you when you're crying. I mean,
Yes.
if you have a relation, so dogs are social creatures, so are humans, and dogs will have a sensitivity of the emotions of the people that they live with. They see us as part of their pack. It's not surprising to find social creatures will have certain empathetic and affiliative behaviors that sort of mimic. And are you saying that there's something like magic there?
I'm saying there's something that's not physical.
Not physical.
You're
So
talking to a
what would that be?
neuroscientist, right? You understand that? You're telling a neuroscientist that behaviors are not genetic, that they're not physical,
Or rooted in the brain somehow.
Yeah, so
because
no,
the brain
I've
is a
talked to-
physical organ.
not to say anything about my partner today, but I've talked to a number of other neuroscientists and some neurophilosophers as well, some famous ones. And the message that I've gotten consistently from them is that there is no support for mind-body dualism, neither in neuroscience nor even in philosophy. The thing you're arguing for is unsupported.
What is survival of the fittest if you're going to love something so much that you would sacrifice yourself?
We have kin selection to explain that. There's an entire field going back 40 years explaining how organisms that are related to each other sacrifice themselves for others. I mean, that's the entire explanation of why we have Hymenoptera, which are the bees, ants, and wasps, on why they have these eusocial organization systems. And it's because they have a very odd genetic organization where the individuals, the females, are 75% related to each other. So they're more related to each other than they are to their own queen.
Yeah,
and therefore,
Darwin-
it's an excellent explanation for why they would sacrifice themselves and not mate themselves and just be taking care of the offspring of an organism that they're only 50% related to, which is the queen. It's because
Doesn't
the
transfer
offspring.
to humans
Just to hear
or
that,
dogs
just hold on,
or
just to hear the end of
cats.
his
I know we got to move on.
Yes, it
but
does.
Yeah.
And there's quite a famous book that was written to explain that very thing, and it's called The Selfish Gene.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it. Alan Beaupre says, Sal, what is your plan to convince the scientific consensus regarding your positions?
I don't have one because they'll make up their mind. I think the best thing is to have experiments that will start to change. I'm grateful that we've been able to break a little bit of the peer review barrier. We couldn't go through biology. We had to go through things like mathematical biology.
I don't think you broke that.
Mathematics. And I'm sorry. Anyway, you guys can look up my publication in a Springer reference on population genetics. But going back, I would emphasize experiments and observations, because we're finding that the way Darwin formulated natural selection is not working at all. It tends to reduce versatility. There's a 2017 paper by Cauchy and Lenski that the genome fitness, the fitness of the creatures increase while the genome decays. That is standard. Selection pressure reduces versatility, therefore complexity. It does not build organs of extreme perfection and complication. If we're just willing to extrapolate that, that's going to be brutally obvious. Also, the testable prediction is the human genome will continue to decay. We will not account for it unless we're willing to sacrifice evolutionary theory. Sadly, that's how we're going to be persuaded as civilization starts to die. Thank you.
However, I have to say that every time, without fail, absolutely every single time, a creationist has ever said, there's a study that says this. When you read it, it doesn't say that. So provide your citation. I'd be happy to read it. But I'll tell you that in 1600 years, evolution is still going to be dominant and creationism won't exist. Not your version of it anyway.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. God's servant says, keep up the good work. Modern Day Debate, thanks for your kind words. Says, Aron and Ra, why did we evolve, quote, singing? I think they mean the behavior of singing. And it says, God bless friend, and Acts 2:38. I'll give you a chance to respond, Aron, in terms of singing, where the behavior singing evolved.
There's a handful of social animals that have developed similar patterns, and that is the social aspect. I mean, there's certainly a number of birds. We can expect that dinosaurs probably did that too, the non-avian ones. We know that, what are the other animals? There are some other animals that bob to music and make, there's a number of insects, but there were, again, social cues for it. So I'm going to say that it's a social interaction for a number of reasons, and not just to express a happy mood.
If I could add to that, so this actually is right along my area of expertise. I can go on for hours talking about this. Singing is something that we see in animals, and particularly we see it in 3 different groups of birds. We see it in songbirds. That's why they're called songbirds. We also can see vocalization learning in parrots. We also see it in hummingbirds. And it turns out that they have a very common basic overall brain morphology shown here. And here's the link to the citation for this paper that I took this from. We have a nice discrete circuit that actually superficially seems to maybe be irreducibly complex. You destroy any one of these areas that it's going to just break apart. But in fact, we know that these areas are just the same basic areas that we find in all animals. It's just that these have become specialized for singing. And we have good explanations of the genetic changes that actually arouse for this. And these are 3 different animals that are not heritable. They're obviously all birds, but they are separate evolution of the same kind of system.
You got it. Thank you very much for this question as well. From Stupid Horror Energy Strikes Again, says, for Sal, if Topo families, she had submitted a second one. I know she said she corrected it. She says, you don't need Topo, let me know if I pronounce this right.
Topoisomerase.
Thank you very much. You don't need topoisomerase if the DNA is in a short, non-circular strand, as there will be no twisting strain to remove.
Oh, well, thank you for that information, Miss Energy. Nice to see you again. I don't object to what you had to say.
Also says, for Sal, if topoisomerase families evolved independently in ancestral lineages of viruses, we predict that some were never transferred to cells and remain to be discovered. Topoisomerase V of
Topoisomerase.
Thank you. V of M Candleri is such a viral specific enzyme.
The problem is we don't know the origin of viruses. There's a cellular theory of the origin of viruses. So these could still have cellular origin. So I know a virologist that says we don't really know if viruses came before cells. We think they came from cells. So it may actually have ultimately a cellular origin. And by the way, it's great to see you again, Stupid Whore. My favorite.
This one from YouTube Punk says, Sal, when are you going to debate Jay Bundy? Myron, bless you. James, aka Swole Lincoln, thank you for that. But Sal, who is this Jay Bundy fellow? Is this one of your buddies?
No, he's like I said, he was on a team that was in opposition to my team, 2 competing university viewpoints, and so why don't we try to set it up, bro? I don't know that we're ready for prime time on Modern Day Debate. But man, he's awful colorful. I mean, if you want someone who's going to entertain, he'll light up the city for you, James. So there you go, Jay Bundy. I gave a plug for you, brother.
Samir says, 52 factorial is the number of possible arrangements of a deck of cards. Universe is not 52 seconds old. It says, factorial seconds old. It says 2.5 billion factorial is the odds of arranging 2.5 billion random atoms into a single chromosome. I'll read that again because I suspect I'm not the only one that's confused. 52 factorial is the number of possible arrangements of a deck of cards. And so that, I think people understand that. You can arrange a deck of cards in
many different
factorial
ways.
Numbers of ways. It says universe is not 52 factorial seconds old. 2.5 billion factorial is the odds of arranging 2.5 billion random atoms into a single chromosome.
I think
Atoms are in a chromosome?
Yeah,
I think
there's
he's talking about the improbability. That's all I can
Yeah.
say.
Right. That's what that's referring to. And obviously it's directed to the evolution side. So I'll take this. So that's just assuming that any particular, first of all, there's a lot more than just 2.5 billion atoms, because we're talking about individual nucleotides, which actually each one is made up of many different atoms. So it's even more than that. The arrangement of a given chromosome, or the entire genome, is not something that has to be emerged just de novo on its own, right? Like, that's not how natural selection works. We have random mutation that occurs, variability that occurs within a population. Some of that variability is due to random mutation, deletion, insertions, even whole genome duplication, which is something that we know has occurred in vertebrate evolution. And then that means that you have duplicates of genes that are free to evolve and change and do new functions. And this is something that we can see traces of in the genome, and how that leads to the emergence of embryology and how we get the brain to organize. You don't need to have a distinct, just random assortment of genes, just de novo.
You got it. Thank you very much for this question. Coming in from...
What? Wait, I'm sorry, James. Sal, aren't you itching to answer that?
I was actually just wanting to respond about Jay Bundy. If I could just finish the story.
Oh, come on.
He works for the Lenski long-term experimental lab. I work for the evolution informatics lab. This is rival evolution labs going after it. So that's why, James. Just wanted to explain what's going on.
You got it. And thank you very much for this question. Coming in from Victor Halleck, says, creationists, why did Japan ignore the flood entirely? I think they're saying there's no stories of a global flood, much less a massive, massive flood in Japanese old cultural
I don't
rites.
think that's true. I think there is.
They have so many tsunamis, they take that shit seriously, so they don't make up these fables.
This one coming in from, do appreciate
Aron.
your question. From James W. It says, after show at Amy Newman's channel, open mic, thanks for letting us know that, as well as Nominal says, Aron, if you were born in a building and lived your whole life without any contact from the outside world, would you assume your building had no designer?
Can buildings create themselves the way organisms do?
This one coming in from Thunderstorm says, my problem with evolution is it's extremely political and has created a false narrative without of Africa, the first Americans not being Solutrine? I don't know. Folks.
The first Americans?
Let me just
Native Americans, I guess.
Okay, so evolution's not remotely political. Out of Africa is not political. That's genetic. And what are they talking about? The first Americans are determined both genetically and archaeologically.
Gotcha. I think we've understood that as best as at least I could. This one coming in from Umbrella Corp says, DOSUG is the answer to evolution. Does anybody know what this acronym DOSUG?
No.
This one coming in from, do appreciate it, Nominal. This one, Pocket Locker 86 says, book it, Bundy and tag team partner Flying Wayne versus Sal and Cindi. Okay, gotcha. And then Stupid Horror Energy strikes again. She says, the computers and computer chips and lack thereof at some points due to shortage, those alone make it impossible to do nested hierarchies with cars. Sal, I think this is for you.
You can still do that do it at the morphological level, clearly, because I've had cars that had their computer chips broken. It still looks like a car. So you can actually, and that's the thing when you look, I know she's relating it to a presentation I gave where I related the morphological progression looks like a nice phylogeny, but all the little pieces are actually very different. And that's where the protein, you have the protein orchard. So even if you can build a nested hierarchy like you do with the all the organisms, you start to have these taxonomically restricted proteins/genes and orphan genes. And so you could still have it at the morphological level, and you could still build
you really can't.
hierarchies.
I explore this in a video called Falsifying Phylogeny, wherein I show like the Volkswagen Beetle, for example, had an aluminum popper engine, 4-cylinder in the rear configuration. And then later Volkswagen Beetle suddenly had a metal, a different alloy in the front engine, and it was water cooled instead of air cooled, and so the automatic transmission, everything had changed. Whereas in phylogenies you have derived synapomorphies that they have to adhere to. You can't just arbitrarily change everything like a creator can. And if there was a creator, then we wouldn't have derived synapomorphies evident everywhere. You would have insects that had mammal eyes, or mollusk eyes, or mollusks that had human eyes, or humans or mammals that had insect eyes, because a creator can mix and match parts as he wants to, but evolution can't. And that's why we don't see any of those type of exceptions.
That's also what I've always thought about evolution. If we had gradually gone from one thing to another in a random fashion without an intelligent design, we would expect to see eyes on various parts of your body.
Why would you expect one thing?
Random number of arms.
Why would you expect one thing to? There's a lot we need to talk, Cindi. Really, please. I'm imploring you to please contact me outside.
What state are you in?
I'm in Texas. But I mean, we do everything online, right? I mean, so contact me. James, put her in touch with me via email. I want to have.
I'd rather do it in person, but I guess it would be a long. Yeah.
What?
I'd rather do it in person, but I'd have to come to Texas for a long time.
I'll put you in touch.
We can do it quickly, painlessly over email, or
painlessly. That I doubt.
This one from Samir says, simple animals evolved 600 million years ago. There are 8.7 million species on Earth. Even if we ignore extant ones, that's still one new species every 68 years. Name newly evolved animals or explain evolution's nap.
Evolution's nap?
The pattern in reality is extinction, not development of new kinds. Isn't it?
You understand that even Hovind
5% are extinct?
You understand that even Hovind argued that speciation is observed, right?
Well, she's saying, or that person is saying something about the development of new species, and I'm saying the pattern is extinction. There's 5% of this.
The pattern is proliferation, and then you have an extinction level event that wipes out large groups of them, and then you have surviving buds, and they continue to branch on for further proliferation. Taxonomy is so much more in-depth than you could possibly imagine. I can show you cladograms that are so detailed to make your head spin.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question. Big Bad Mama says, Sal and Cindi, do you literally believe that trees were created before the sun was created, like the Bible maintains?
Why not? It's only a 24-hour day.
Yeah.
Sleep, wake up, there's the sun.
I personally believe it. And also I believe the reason it was done is to force one particular interpretation of the Bible, being the 6-day literal creation in less than 10,000 years. So yes, faith belief, not a scientific one. Thank you.
Hi, Big Bad Mama. Thank you.
Hi, Big Bad Mama. Thank you for caring for Cindi.
Yeah.
Nominal says,
awesome.
Don't worry, we got more from Big Bad Mama. But this one from Nominal says, Aron, is Man Bear Pig, let's see, in the room with us right now? I don't get it. Some sort of South Park joke?
I don't know. I don't watch popular media much anymore.
I don't know what's cool anymore. Okay, this one. Aiden Linden says, question for Sal. If you admit parts of your position are faith-based, when you lack evidence, how can you claim to be the one with more evidence?
I don't. Oh, by the way, Aiden, and I just want to thank everyone who's had the outpouring of love for Cindi, even on this panel. Aiden's one of the special people. I don't claim that I have more evidence. I claim that I find evolution less believable than creation. And I gave I gave the examples, particularly at the molecular and cellular level. So nice to see you,
It's
Aiden.
growing in over time, just like with me. I was first saved in 1984, and I was in college and in secular university. When I first started hearing them talk about evolution, I went, that doesn't make any sense. And my belief in the strength of creationism and the weakness of evolution has only grown over the past 40 years of being a Christian.
And that makes me think that I must have known, honestly, no exaggeration, I must have known more about evolution when I was in second grade than you did then or now.
This one coming in from Option Select says, how foxes got tame with selective breeding if behavior is not rooted in DNA.
That's for me, I guess. So behavior is rooted in DNA because behavior is a manifestation of the activity within neural networks. Neural networks have to emerge from the expression of genes during development and how that they work in the brains as they work. So we actually have a pretty reasonable explanation for how this change in behavior came about. We think that what's being selected against is against the aggressive stress response that the foxes were having. So that's the adrenal gland that's involved with that. The adrenal gland arises from the same part of the embryo as the rest of the brain does, which is the neural crest. And if you're selecting against something that arises from the same part of the embryo, you're going to see similar changes that come about. This is known as the domestication syndrome. I actually have a video on my YouTube channel explaining this phenomenon. It's a really super interesting topic. I encourage you to check it out.
You got it. Thank you very much. This one coming in from Thuros Rex says, thanks for inspiring me to become a teacher, Aron. That's nice. Big Thang Flying Wayne says, if Jay's lab is D1, Sal's lab is D11 levels. Pocket Locker says, Jay Bundy here. Enough of Jay Bundy. It says, I worked in the Lenski lab. Sal keeps citing. He's wrong. He knows he's wrong. If he keeps going to debate me, he needs to do his homework. Oh, juicy. All right. Well, that's a lively one. This one coming in from...
Can I say something responding to Chris?
If it's short and pithy, we've got a couple more questions, and we got to get you guys out of here to get a decent night of sleep.
Well, it's fairly juicy. Okay, so Chris is maintaining that behavior is genetic?
I'm maintaining that behavior is a manifestation of the activity of neural networks. Of course, it depends upon genes. The field of behavioral genetics is a very growing, vibrant field. It has absolutely nothing. I mean, of course, it has a lot to do with evolution, but we can consider that even separate from questions of evolution. Yes.
Well, to me, that points to the obvious conclusion that judgment is ridiculous. You can't judge somebody's behaving from their genes. There's got to be choice and responsibility.
You understand that dogs are bred for behaviors, right? I mean, so they identify that certain dogs have a propensity to particular behaviors, so they breed for those behaviors. If they're not, if it's not genetic, then it's not possible to breed for those behaviors.
Yeah.
And I want to address something that I said before because I know it came out wrong. So a bunch of comments about it. When I was in second grade, I was reading books on evolution and I was explaining evolution to my parents. And Cindi said she didn't start learning about evolution until she was in college. That's what I meant.
No, well, I didn't mean to say that. I mean, I was raised in a secular school, so
and that doesn't, I know how bad America's secular schools are. They don't teach evolution in public school either. Yeah. They certainly don't do it properly.
No, absolutely.
You got it. There's one coming in from Do Appreciate Your Question. Only just a couple more. Syrupy says, Cindi/Sal, faith, right? Does it ever bother you that faith means confidence in belief? Belief is emotionally based. Are you scared to be proven wrong?
No.
Of course, we're scared. At least I am. I can't speak for Cindi. But as far as faith goes, what began it for me was when I was in math class and they said, these are the axioms of mathematics, real number system. They're like the articles of faith. I almost fell out of my seat. So there are certain assumptions that are unprovable that may be true. And at some I think there's the variety of thoughts and theorems where fundamentally the most important things, the most foundational, can only be accepted by faith. You cannot ultimately prove it. You just find one set of statements, bodies of belief, more believable than others. So thank you for the question.
I would have to say that it involves both. Okay, there are some things that you accept by faith. There are other things that are based on historical facts. Jesus is the historical fact.
No, it isn't.
Is my faith.
No, he isn't.
My faith.
Okay, but a fact and faith are not the same thing. A fact is objectively verifiable data. Jesus
Are you
is not
saying
a
he
fact.
didn't exist, or that he
I'm
didn't?
saying it's not objectively
It was all a
verifiable
fairy tale.
data. You can have opinions on whether, and you can say, well, I'm 60% sure there was a Jesus, but maybe it wasn't exactly like what they defined. In any case, Jesus is not a fact.
In your opinion.
This one coming in from Joe Schwartz. Says, I am the soyest of the boys.
I feel the same way, Aron. I feel the same way.
Aron, and a fact is
Aron.
objectively verifiable data. Jesus is not objectively verifiable data. Therefore, Jesus is not a fact.
I disagree.
Not an opinion. That's a fact. Jesus is not a fact, is a fact.
I disagree. There's a whole lot of
Okay, you're welcome to be wrong.
You got it. This one from Amy Newman says, after the debate, great job, Aron and Dr. T. Hope you're doing well, Cindi and Sal. May I ask, what would it take for you to be convinced of evolution, Cindi and Sal?
Show that it's statistically feasible for the things I pointed out, for chromatin evolution in eukaryotes, for the membrane-bound organelles, for the insertion of eukaryotic nuclear localization signals across multiple proteins simultaneously so the creature doesn't die, also to solve problems with abiogenesis, et cetera, and to also refute things like apparently genetic entropy. And do that, I'd be impressed. Thank you. Okay. Nice to see you, Amy. And thank you for your outpouring of love to Cindi. Cindi, thanks for being Cindy's friend. Appreciate you.
You
Hi,
got
Amy.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out, I see somebody in the chat named Angel Moo. I was accused of being Angel Moo. There was somebody accused me for years of being that person. I can't be here and there at the same time. Something else, somebody that I saw in the comment a lot, if you don't mind me just jumping in to say this, because I saw it scroll up a number of times. Atheists do not believe we came from nothing. That's creationists who believe that. I don't know an atheist alive who believes there was ever nothing to start with. So just another
What
minor.
about Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss?
Right. Lawrence Krauss does not believe everything came from nothing. He redefined nothing in his deceptively titled book. The first time I had a chance to talk with Lawrence, I complained about the fact that he titled his book that way, and just to get him back, we were on a charity fundraiser telethon at the time when I first talked to him. I said, just to get him back, we did come from monkeys, and I can prove it.
This one coming in from.
We came from absolute nothing. We believe that God can make something out of nothing. And that's why resurrection happened, because he can take a dead body and make it living.
Well, the only demonstration of that is that you guys made up God out of nothing.
This one coming in from, do appreciate your question, Deej. Says, Aron, are you saying that Jesus wasn't real?
I'm not entirely sure about that. I think that there was some core inspirations for the Jesus character. I don't think there was just one. I don't think you could, if you had a time machine and a guide who spoke Aramaic, I don't think you could find the Jesus you're looking for. If you found a Jesus, it wouldn't be the Jesus you wanted.
You got it. This one coming in from, I think that's it.
Aron.
Samir, thanks for your final question we got. Says, why did birds that lived away from humans for thousands of years develop the ability to speak the time that those who lived with us didn't? This is God's way.
What?
Speak the time? I don't know what that means. Does anybody know what that means?
Is he saying that birds evolved the ability to speak even though they weren't living near humans for their model?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right. Okay. So
if I could
Yeah.
read it one more time, just in case anybody else didn't get it. I think I get what you mean, but they say, why did birds, and then Dr. T will kick it right over to you. So they said, why did birds that lived away from humans for thousands of years develop the ability to speak during the time that those who lived with us didn't? The
So
birds that would live with us. Okay.
I'd be real simple about it. Certain species are not going to just spontaneously learn how to speak because they have to live with humans. There's just, it has to be something that's naturally selected for. It has to serve a purpose. We know that birds have learned how to sing or vocalize because it confers a selective advantage. It's typically something across many of these species that we see that just males that sing, and they're advertising to females, and they're using it in a very reproductive context. So that's my answer to that.
You got it. And thank you very much. High Flyer says, I'm not sure if there's a God of the universe, but I do know there's a God of modern day debate, and his name is Aron. You got a fan out there, Aron. This one from KD5681 says, keep up the great work, Aron. I learned a lot from you.
Yeah, got to give some love to Chris because he did a really extraordinary job here.
He did.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%.
Same on the other side too. I really appreciate the conversation that we've had so far.
Thank you.
This has been fantastic. I've got to say, I appreciate that you guys have had the perfect mix of being cordial and also being passionate. That makes it fun. It's fun. It's just nice when it walks that line. It's just right, kind of Goldilocks of where it's passionate and yet it's not going off the rails. It's reasonable still. So I appreciate it. This has been a fantastic debate. Want to say thanks to everybody watching. Our guests are linked in the description. So there are 712 people watching right now, and I'm sure this is going to get tens of thousands of views. Folks, I got to tell you, our guests are linked in the description. So if you'd like to learn more about their positions, you certainly can by clicking down below. I highly encourage you. You can check out those links right now, including if you're listening via the podcast. All of the Modern Day Debate debates end up on the podcast. If you didn't know that, folks, it's ad-free. We don't make a dime off of it. So I highly encourage you to check it out on your favorite podcast app. But our guests are linked there as well. So you can find Aron's, Dr. Thompson's, and Cindy's and Sal's links in the description box of the podcast, too. So check those links out. Want to say one last thank you to our guests. It's been a true pleasure to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James. Yep, this has been fun.
My pleasure. And hold on, sorry.
See you at the after show.
This is we got just two last ones. This is Samir Farsain says, Sal, you're smart, but you don't talk enough.
Oh my gosh, that's a huge dog. Is that a bear? I'm sorry to interrupt you, James.
That is a big one.
What the heck is that?
It's the Great Pyrenees.
Really?
He was a rescue. He walked into my house like he lived here because his owners threw him away.
Oh, Aron, you scored.
I love him.
Scored.
This one from two last ones, they snuck them in. It was a compliment from Samir. Says, Sal, you're smart. You don't talk enough. They want to hear you talk more. Syrupy says, I stand Dr. Thompson. To your point, I hear starlings in the parking lot of my work mimic car alarms.
Yeah, they do. They're amazing mimics. So you can even get starlings to vocalize and even make some human noises too. So they're awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well,
Whales sing too.
with that,
Cindi and I have an after show on my channel, just FYI.
You want to do Amy's or yours?
I'm streaming as well. If people want to come into my channel,
Oh, no.
I know. I don't mean to steal everyone, but
and folks,
happy to answer some more questions and talk a little bit with people too. So
remember,
sadly,
folks,
I have deadlines I have to meet. I've got projects I've got to jump into editing, and I was up all night last night. I'm probably going to be up all night tomorrow.
get some sleep.
You got it. We'll let you
Bless
go.
you, Aron.
Thana so
Yeah.
much. I'll be back
Thank
in just a
you.
moment, folks, with a post-credit scene for about a few minutes. Stick around. amazing. My dear friends, you cannot see me yet. I'm rebooting the Zoom window, but want to say we appreciate you. Want to say thanks so much for being with us. It has been a true pleasure. And yeah, sorry, let me just try to rearrange this a little bit. Got to start the old Zoom camera back up, but want to say, my dear friends, we really do appreciate you hanging out with us. Thanks for all of your support. It's always fun. And I've got to tell you, yeah, my dear friends, there, so it's a little bit better. But let me work on this. I've got to say, first, I want to greet you in the old live chat, as we do appreciate you, whether it be atheists, Christians, Muslims, you name it. We are glad that you are here. Thanks for being with us. Want to say, my dear friends, we have big things coming up. In particular, we are finalizing the Modern Day debate conference called DebateCon. It is going to be huge. You do not want to miss it. If you happen to be in the Dallas area, keep an eye out. We are going to release the exact link for tickets, as it's going to be in the Dallas area, and we're 99% sure we're going to push it out just a little bit further. Gives us a little bit more time, as it's taken a little bit too long to get everything set up, but probably November 19th. It's almost certain it'll be in Dallas. It's going to be tremendous. And Amanda, I see you there in the old live chat. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for all of your help in helping us find the location. And thanks, Chris G, for all of your support as well. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. Chris has done a fantastic job. I hate putting him on the spot, but Chris did a fantastic job volunteering at the last conference. It helped a ton, as well as Sideshow Nav, who was basically like my right-hand man as we were going in there, and just worked his butt off as well. And so we do appreciate it. You guys, thank you for all of your support. You guys make Modern Day Debate awesome. Seriously, all of you. We want to say thanks for all of your, it really does help. Hitting the like button. It helps. Thank you guys for doing that. We've got 300 likes. That's fantastic. Hitting the share button. If you happen to have friends who enjoy creation evolution debates, or they love listening to Aron or Dr. Thompson or Sal or Cindi, I highly encourage you, hit that share button. Let people know about this debate, and then they'll be able to see it too. That really helps us, as we really do appreciate it. Third-party testimony, it really does mean a lot. It goes a long way, and so we appreciate you guys sharing Modern Day Debate with people all over the place. So thank you guys for doing that. And I've got to tell you, you guys, it's amazing, as we have been so thrilled to have so much support by so many people. Thank you guys. Even hanging out here, it makes it a fun channel when we have all these people from different walks of life, atheists, Christians, Muslims, people who are spiritual but not religious, you name it. Everybody, we appreciate you being with us. That makes this channel an eclectic mix of different people from different walks of life. So thank you guys so much. We really do appreciate it. So that's amazing. And I want to say, we hope that you enjoy the live chat, as well as if you watch afterwards. I know some people are like, man, I didn't get to, I don't get to watch live, but I enjoy watching it after. We hope that it's enjoyable for you, for real. We hope that you feel welcome. And so seriously, I'm going to want to say just some shout outs. Wolfos, I see you there in the old live chat. Living Room Speakers, good to see you again. Kata Jabril, thanks for coming by. Standing for Poop, aka Standing for Truth, good to see you. Thanks for dropping in. Character 57, thanks for coming by, says James. That's what's with you in these polls, man. I did and I liked it. Quote, I did, but I feel stimulated to do it now. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. We appreciate that. See, stimulated, not like that, you sicko. Well, I want to say, Manic Panda's good to see you there. Says, I saw Anna Kasparian name drop Modern Day Debate to Dennis Prager on her show the other day. Modern Day Debate's reputation is growing, James. Thanks for that. I was super encouraged. A lot of people sent me that. As it's true, we were mentioned just in passing. We weren't the focus, but we were mentioned in passing on the Young Turks, as well as Sam Cedar's show, because I saw Sam's got 1 million subs. The Young Turks has got like 5 million subs. So that is super encouraging. I told you guys before, it's really happening. Seriously, this is a small win to celebrate. I mentioned before, I said, believe me, folks, this is like 6 months I started saying it, maybe even 12 months ago I started saying it. I said, hey, believe me, Modern Day Debate is continuing to grow. We are going to have it such that you're going to see people, big names on Twitter, and they're going to say, hey, we should debate. And they're going to say, well, where should we debate? And they'll say, well, Modern Day Debate. That's what I've heard of that's neutral. I'm telling you, it's actually happening. So we ought to celebrate that small win, as it's true. The brand, the Modern Day Debate, its presence on YouTube really has expanded its boundaries, which is, we're not ashamed of saying we want to grow. And it's not for some sort of sad, narcissistic thing of me like, wow, so many subscribers. That would be sad. Instead, it's because we have a big vision, folks. We firmly believe that Modern Day Debate has an important, meaningful purpose. In particular, we want to provide a level playing field so that everybody can make their case on a natural or neutral debate platform. You can tell I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I've been stumbling all over my words today. But I want to say thank you guys for your support. Seriously, it's been really busy, but I am excited, my dear friends. It's all going to pay off. I've been putting in a ton of it's been kind of exhausting emotionally. I've been trying to set up some really big debates, and one of them has been, it's been taking, as the old phrase is, the patience of Job. It's been so emotionally draining as I've been listening and waiting for a response and saying like, hey, hopefully we get a response, and trying to set up a debate that, if this debate happens, it's still kind of in the air on, we're not sure. But if it happens, I'm telling you, Modern Day Debate will become a major, it'll get major recognition, and we will get probably even mentioned again on the Young Turks. I'm not exaggerating. It would be that big that I actually think it's probable that it would get mentioned. So it would be, and not just mentioned in passing, but mentioned for how big this debate would be. And we've got a number of other debates as well, namely at this conference. These are going to be gigantic, seriously. So I'm telling you, I'm not making this up. Jeremy Nolan, thanks for coming by, says James. Debate COVID origin. Maybe. We've got to be careful. I've got to be honest. I've seen some of these channels get nuked overnight. I'm not joking. It looks like it's a nightmarish scenario. Some of these channels, I've seen some of these YouTubers, basically they say, hey, I woke up and I got an email from YouTube, and I don't have any strikes currently. And all of a sudden I get an email from YouTube that says, hey, we looked over a lot of your videos, usually because I won't say why, what instigates it, because just no need to say it. But long story short, YouTube, for some reason or another, decides to review a bunch of videos on a channel. And then they say, you violated YouTube terms of service. This would have been 3 strikes had we seen it when it happened. And so you're done. And they just delete the whole channel. So you guys, you've heard about Sneeko. Recently, Sneeko with 1 million subs on one channel. I think his other channel had like 750,000. It was huge as well. Boom, gone overnight. So Sneeko is one person we're going to invite to our DebateCon conference, by the way. So want to let you know about that. Namely, we want to talk to him about whether or not big tech is unfairly nuking channels. So YouTube has gone scorched earth on a lot of these people. We think it's sad. I frankly don't agree with Sneeko on everything. I don't agree with, I mean, you know, there's everybody I'm going to disagree with them in some way, but I wouldn't want them to be banned from YouTube because they have controversial views. So that's something that we will probably talk about at our conference, ironically. And Origami says KFC versus McDonald's debate. Thanks for that idea, Origami. And then Greg Warrener, thanks for coming by. We are glad that you are here. Says Greg Warrener, if you guys create a market for this, watch out because a bigger fish will compete with you guys. Yeah, I suspect that. I've always suspected that there's probably going to be people that try to duplicate. In fact, I've seen a number of channels try to duplicate. In my opinion, I know this sounds probably a little, I don't know, let me know if it sounds cringe. There are some channels I've seen pop up in the last year or two that I think that they're copycat channels. I'm like, wow, that looks a lot like Modern Day Debate. And it looks a lot like our branding. And it's, so to me, I think that, yeah, it's true. We've been very fortunate, very blessed, whatever you want to say, however you want to call it. And we're very grateful. Thank you guys for your support. Like, I feel blessed. Like, this has been a total blast. You guys have been super supportive, and I appreciate that. We want to encourage you. I've got friends that are Muslims. I've got friends that are Muslim, that are atheists, that are Christians, that are, you name it. I am thankful that you guys, that we have transcended. I know that a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm not going to be friends with those atheists, or I'm not going to be friends with those Christians, or I'm not going to be friends with those Muslims. I would say, folks, you are missing out on so many possibly good relationships if you write off everybody from a group like that. Do not succumb to that. That's a sad, degenerate form of kind of psychology. You can't succumb to that type of tribalism. I highly encourage you, befriend. I know I'm not telling you you're going to like everybody from every other group. It's true. Every group's got some people that are just cringe and you don't want to be around them. I'll be honest. That's obviously true. But nonetheless, I've got to tell you, I've had friends from all walks of life that have supported me in my hard times, and I'm thankful for that. And they continue to support me, and I just want to say I appreciate that. So we hope you feel welcome, whether you be atheist, Christian, Muslim, creationist, evolution, you name it, whatever it is, we are glad that you are here. As well as Tri-Edge Gaming, thanks for coming by. Says, I remember subscribing when you had 80, or what is it, just 60,000 subscribers. We've grown a lot. I think it's like almost 30,000 this year. I can't remember. It's been huge. So we're really grateful. So we are super thankful. We appreciate everything, you guys. It's been a total blast. And we are just, I'm telling you, this is just the beginning of our story. Modern Day Debate is absolutely obsessed with being fully neutral. Our moderators are not going to take, you could see some channels, the moderator will systematically jump in and take the side of one of the speakers or one of the sides in a debate. And it's like, kind of obvious where the moderator stands on this, even though they didn't actually explicitly tell us. Likewise, we're different from all of, because frankly, tons of channels host debates, but we're different than all of them in the sense that, and I'm not joking, because even Intelligence Squared is a YouTube channel that's bigger than ours, at least in subscriber count. They like have a way bigger subscriber count, although their most recent debate, or like their most recent videos that they release, on average, the mode view count, or even the average, is smaller than ours. And I'm not trying to brag. I'm just saying I think Modern Day Debate is doing something different here. It's fully neutral. Intelligence Squared, I'm saying it, I'm telling you, they've got videos where it's like there's clearly one side. There's a video where it's one side taking one position. And you might be like, well, James, you could do that. You could always just have another video that has one side taking the opposite position. But the thing is, I don't know if they keep track in terms of whether or not, let's say, primarily these videos might lean politically right. And maybe only like 30% of the one-sided videos are politically left. Or it might be vice versa. Like maybe they're 70% politically left and 30% politically to the right. In which case it's like, well, it's kind of clear, like you guys are kind of seeming to, like, on average, push a particular view. We don't do that. We don't have any interviews. We've had people offer interviews. Big times, like sometimes big time people, and we've said, like, we don't really do interviews. It's got to be a debate, where we can't just do an interview because it's just not how we roll. Every single stream, every single video that's uploaded is going to have both sides represented. That's important for us. Tuss Beatbox, thanks for your channel support. Seriously, it means a lot. Appreciate you being a channel member. Perfect One, thanks for coming by, and thanks for being a mod. Thanks for your support. Says, appreciate that. If you build it, they will come. As I've got to tell you, I always thought, and here's the thing, I put out a poll on YouTube recently. Let me tell you guys something. I put out a poll on YouTube I think it was like super late last night. I couldn't sleep, as I told you. So I can't remember. I think it was like, was it 11 or I don't know, whatever time it was. I put out a poll. And I was wondering, I was like, what is it about Modern Day Debate that people have enjoyed it? Like, what's made it fun? Because that's the truth. You could do something and be like, yeah, but like, what is it about Modern Day Debate that people have enjoyed? Like, is it, because like I said, in the post, I said, I suspect it's the quality of the speaker. I think we have good speakers. And if they're not great debaters, they're oftentimes entertaining. And once in a while, okay, I've admitted we got to improve our vetting. Sometimes it's not great. I've admitted too, we've got to improve our moderating, and me in particular. But here's the thing. I've got to tell you, my dear friends, I asked people in this poll, what is it about Modern Day Debate that you really like? If you had to pick one thing that you like most, what is it? And I was like, I think that it would be that it's because we're fully neutral, because that's like kind of rare. It's a very rare brand move, is that we're like, hey, that's us. Like, that's our identity. That's the most important thing we want to be known for, is that like we're going to give everybody a fair shot. We're not going to take sides. And then I thought, well, maybe it's because we cover stuff that the mainstream media doesn't cover. And this probably sounds so braggadocio. I'm not trying to brag. Sorry about that if I seem like I am. It's not that I'm trying to brag. I thought, but like I said, I was trying to figure out. I was like, maybe it's because we cover stuff that the mainstream media won't cover. Like CNN is not going to have a debate on creation evolution. They might have had like a soundbite like 10 years ago, back when religion debates were hot, but they would not have had like a 2-hour debate like we do. So that's one thing. And likewise, they'll never have a flat Earth debate, even a soundbite of it. Maybe a soundbite. I've seen like little segments back when it was really popular. Like I saw little segments on some news stations, but they'll never go as deep as we do. And frankly, there are some topics that we have that they probably wouldn't cover. Like we at least cover them more often. So like, let's say aliens, UFOs, whatever, and Bigfoot, all that stuff. So I would say, I think that maybe it's that we cover topics that the mainstream media, the mainstream news doesn't cover. And likewise, the mainstream news, like what mainstream news is going to have, is Islam violent? We have that debate this Friday night. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be huge. Apostate Prophet and David Wood teaming up. It is going to be gigantic as they're taking on Perfect Dawa and Nadir Ahmed, who are both very experienced debaters as well. This is going to be a monstrous debate this Friday, for real. So that's one thing. But I've got to tell you, my dear friends, I really appreciate all of your support. And I also was like, well, maybe it's the variety of topics, because we're not just politics. We don't just do political debates. We don't just do religion debates. We do science debates too. We talked about all sorts of the UFOs or aliens, things like that, creation, evolution. We do everything. So it's like, well, I was like, maybe that's it. And then we also have different formats. So, sometimes we have 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2. Sometimes we have a 6-person panel. Probably going to do less of those. Those are probably too big. But nonetheless, it's at least a big variety of types, right? And most people, let me check on the poll right now, because you're probably like, oh, I don't know. What does the poll say, James? The last I checked, it was almost double. The highest one was, most people said, I like that you guys are neutral. That's like the coolest thing about modern day debate, which seriously, we appreciate that because we try really hard to be neutral. The second one, so that's 47%. The next one, a distant second, was 24%. And by the way, you're kind of like, oh, well, this is probably only like 100 people that voted on the poll. It was 1,700. So it was a pretty good, like a pretty decent sample. And oftentimes, a lot of people don't realize, like, you actually don't need nearly as huge of a sample as you might expect to. Obviously the random part is most important, but if it's a random sample, which this frankly actually isn't, but nonetheless, with a random sample, you can actually get a pretty good grip of things numerically, even with millions of people with significantly smaller numbers. But again, it has to be random. This admittedly is not really random. It's not random, but nonetheless, everybody's welcome to respond to the poll. So if somebody was really wanting to say something, we also opened it in the comments where people could say whatever they wanted, which, by the way, the most common thing in the comments was modern day debate is neutral. So tons of channels host debates on debates. Like, we're not the first, and we're certainly not the only one that does it now. But nonetheless, I think people say, hey, you know what? I like, though, that it's very neutral. You guys give everybody a fair shot. So we are excited to do that. We believe that's a value to YouTube, and that YouTube deserves a better class of debate channel, and we're going to give it to them. That's what Modern Day Debate is doing. So we want to say thank you guys for all of your support. Seriously, it's just, honestly, it's been great. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Thanks for your kind words. Standing for Poop says the best part of Modern Day Debate is James's 25-inch biceps. That's funny. And but yeah, I appreciate that. Let me just drink this water. I'm thirsty. I'm pretty tired. I should go to sleep soon. But I want to say, if you didn't know, we do have a Patreon. Thanks for your support, as that helps us to do things like this huge conference that we're planning for November. It's going to be gigantic. So that's one thing. Thank you guys for all of your support. That means more than you know. And Patreon is one way to support us. Thank you guys for that support. That's linked in the description box. If you have not ever checked it out, hey, peek, maybe you'd like it. I don't know. Otherwise, we have YouTube channel memberships, which also give you the ability to use these emoticons. If you do the smallest level membership, you could use this soy boy emoticon, and you could say, for example, let's see here. I'm saying Sideshow Nav is a soy boy in the live chat, and I'm using the emoticon. How could you pass that up? So we do have channel memberships. We encourage you to sign up. It's only $1.99 a month, like $1.99 a day for a cup of coffee from Starbucks. You don't get that anymore. It's just not that cheap anymore. It's not. So this is $1.99 a month, and it helps support the channel. You get to use these emoticons and call people soy boy in the live chat, as well as say amazing, because we have an emoticon for that as well, or nasty. What a nasty guy. Sideshow Nav does it back. She says James is nasty. That's funny. So yeah, it's true. And Living Room Speaker says that's a tremendous jug, James. Thank you. You're right. It is tremendous. Thanks, Claire, for being with us. I see you there in the old live chat. Thanks, Tuss Beatbox, for your channel membership support. Jean Lorette, thanks for your channel membership support. Seriously, it means a lot. We appreciate you guys. It really does mean a lot. And for real, we're going to do something big. This conference is going to be huge. So we really are. Like, the lineup is looking, frankly, a lot bigger and better than last conference. The last conference was good, but this one I think is going to be way bigger. So you guys, it's going to be in Dallas. Keep an eye out for it. November 19th is when we're planning. Summer, good to see you. I see you there in the live chat. Thanks for being with us. Hannah Anderson, good to see you in the live chat. I see you there. Christoph, good to see you as well. Deej, thanks for your support using the nasty emoticons. Seamus Crawford says, Modern Day Debate keeps bringing good content. Thanks for that support. Seriously, that means a lot. All credit to our guests. Seriously, we appreciate them. They make this show awesome. They're the lifeblood of the channel. Seriously, we wouldn't survive without them. They make it awesome. So we are grateful for all of the guests. But want to say thank you guys. Seriously, it's always fun and good to see you slaying in the live chat, as well as Syrupy. Let me know if I'm saying it right. Syrupy, we're glad you're here. Theological Introspection, glad you are here, as well as Sandy Pigeon. Thanks for dropping in. Brooke Sparrow, good to see you. Thanks for all your support, Brooke. Seriously, I hope you're doing well. And thanks so much for being with us. We pretty much caught up. Yeah. Well, as well as, that's right, Hannah Anderson says, still time to hit that like button. You can. Thanks for that support. And let me try this. This is a new feature. You can start a Q&A. It says Modern Day Debate Q&A. I'm going to put a question. What is Sideshow Nav's favorite movie? This is a new feature. Do you guys see this in the live chat? I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to see what this is like. Start Q&A. So I just put it, I'm putting it in the live chat. I'm saying start Q&A. Oh, okay. I guess it's just, wait, what the heck? I'm confused. I don't know if you're able to see this, but the live chat, oh, okay. So I'm confused. So it still has the live chat. It says questions, answer viewer questions live. Oh, I see it. You can like have it so that the chat can like say whatever to the question. Sommer says porno. Okay, well, thank you, Sommer, for that. Nasty guy, Sideshow Nav. Tuss Beatbox says, what's your favorite bread at Subway? Obviously Italian urban cheese. Maybe Italian artisan. Seamus Crawford says, will you do a debate, James? Hey, that's a good question. Well, that's not answering my question, though. Option Select says, what's your favorite food? Samir says, is James a one-man show behind Modern Day Debate? No, definitely not. I've got so many people that are volunteering and helping me out, like Amanda and Sideshow Nav and Chris, and just seriously tons of people. Our Patreon meeting, they're giving me ideas all the time. So we've got those Patreon tiers, and just everybody's supportive, not just financially, but the Patreon also. We have these Zoom chats. And people give me ideas and they give me feedback on like how to steer Modern Day Debate, because it's helpful for me to get feedback. And so, yeah. Syrupy said, did you ever catch a ball at a game? I don't understand. Wait a minute. It's like, says this will remove all questions in the question list. Oh, okay. I guess this is like questions for me. I guess I'm not supposed to put a question. I'm supposed to just answer the question. Okay. So But yes, okay. Seamus says, "Will you do a debate, James?" I'm open to it. I'd like to do a debate on whether or not deplatforming is good. I would say it's not good. I want to make an argument that it's not, but I don't want to know if, like, I want it to be a really special debate. I'll just put it that way. So I want it to be with a big name, somebody, a big popular debater. Samar says, and that's the ironic thing, is people who are for deplatforming generally don't like modern day debate, because we've hosted some really controversial people. Like we admittedly have. Like really controversial. So a lot of them, they don't like modern day debate, so they wouldn't want to debate me anyway. Samir says, is James a one-man show? Yeah, definitely am not a one-man show. Deej says, clearly Mean Girls. That's true. That's Bob's favorite. I've never caught a ball at a game. I don't think I did. I think at a minor league game, I got a foul ball that like rolled up to the fence when I was a kid. I think that had happened, but that was pretty common. Like, it's pretty common. You could get that if you went to the game, and it was minor leagues. But let's see. So no, not at a major league game. Where's Arnie1 says, do you think that if humans went extinct, another species would become sentient to take our place? I don't know. I doubt it. That's interesting. But theological introspection says, are chickens dinosaurs? If so, you reckon tired was tasty. Reckon tired? Who's tired? Sideshow Nav says, you're going to show that tat tonight. No, Bob. Says, let's see. Jeremy Nolan says, it says ask something. Oh, okay, you just asked something. So I'm not supposed to ask you. You're supposed to ask me, I guess. Okay. Samir says, James, how are you going to handle super chat questions when the channel is 10 times larger? 1 million subs, 20,000 people on live. That'd be cool if we got to that. And yeah, we'd have to be very efficient and make sure that questions were very specific to the topic. Deej says, James, if you personally do a debate, will that hurt the channel's neutral reputation? That's one thing I worry about, to be honest. So that is something I think about, and it's one reason why I've been I'm definitely not going to just jump into any debate. Omega Weapon says, have a good one, James. Thanks, Omega Weapon. Seriously, that means a lot. Sandy Pigeon says, hit that like button, please. Origami says, get Nadir and Darth debate. Maybe. Maybe. But yeah, want to say thank you guys. I got to go. It's getting really late. It's 9 o'clock here, so I got to get to sleep. I'm behind on sleep. Want to say thanks, guys, for all of your support. Seriously. I'm looking through here, and I'm pumped, and I just want to say thank you guys for all of your support. There are a million ways in which you have helped the channel, and if you're kind of I'm pumped up, James, I want to support it. One way is just sharing this channel, tweeting it to a friend, or sharing it in text message with a friend who loves controversial debates. That really does go a long way. We've seen people in our YouTube creator studio. I can see how many shares each debate gets, and you guys do share a ton. So we appreciate that. Seriously, thank you guys so much for all of that. So I love you guys. Thanks for all your support. We're excited about the future. And as I said, our story is just beginning. We are going to do big things at Modern Day Debate in the future. We're excited about it. Thank you guys for all of your support. We will see you at the next debate, which is this Friday. It's going to be amazing. See you next time, folks. Option select. Thanks for letting me know I didn't read your super chat. Sorry about that. Says you missed my super chat, which was I did ask the one about the foxes, and I know that you also asked, can we have a second one for this? I'm open to that. We might. I'm open to it, although we probably want to give the guests a break for a while. And Nominal, I missed your super chat. They said Modern Day Debate. Thanks for the debates. Thanks, Nominal. Seriously, that means a lot. I do appreciate all of your support, and I'll see if you're in the live. Yeah, I see you're in the live chat still. So hopefully you heard me say that. But yeah, whenever people give the high five to Modern Day Debate and they say, "Hey, Modern Day Debate, thanks for having these debates," I try to read those on the post-credits show, just because all the questions for the guests. I try to keep the focus on the guests, but I don't know, it's not a big deal. So I appreciate you saying it, and I'll probably start reading them some during the Q&A too, just because I know sometimes people leave during the post-credit scene, so they may not even hear it be read. So want to say thanks for your support, though. Seriously, we love you guys. Samir says you missed mine as well, but you read the free question. Let's see. Samir, I don't know. Let me see. You said, how are you going to handle questions when the channel is 10 times bigger? Oh, I see. Yeah. Thanks for saying. I didn't realize I missed that. When did you? I can't believe you said that so early. When did you? Whoa, did I? Oh, yeah, I did miss a couple of super chats there. Yeah. Wait, those are super chats? Oh, yeah, those came in like super early. You're right, I did. Sorry I missed those, but I'm glad you said it so I can say them now. So thanks, guys. I love you. I am looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. We'll see you next time.